kills. Despite honorable members, you would say the question reflects a panic in society. And as a mine worker, one thing I learned quite early in life is that panic kills. Despite the heightened geopolitical risk, including disruption in the Middle East shipping routes, the Republic's current petroleum supply security arrangement remain robust. The latest monitoring report confirms the overall supply is stable across petroleum products, with imports arriving as planned through the mid-April 2026. Inland supply is supported by stable refining, Sasol, Saprev, and the coal to liquid refinery in Secunda, ensuring that there is reliable supply of energy. And even the Cape Town refinery maintenance shutdown, it will end of April. That means it will add to the reliability of the supply in the country. Planned imports are covering the duration of petroleum of the shutdown and contingent measures. LPG supply remains stable as this product sourced in the basic Atlantic. Let me explain this in simple terms. Our crude oil is sourced from Africa and Atlantic Basin, not in the Middle East. It is processed product that are sourced from the Middle East. So every arrangement that we do is supplementing what we normally source from the Middle East. Our refining capacity is giving us 40% security in energy supply, but forward imports are covering for a longer period as we look for diversification. I'm sure if you monitor the news, you will appreciate that even the Strait of Hormuz allows cargoes that come to South Africa without interruption. So that means we're having a chance of having stable supply over a long period. Leave everybody else who makes the announcement that try to implant panic in society. There should be no panic in society. Panic kills. Now, companies operating in the petroleum sector have already pursued diversification to reduce reliance on the one source. So that already is done by companies as a business requirement for companies that actually supply security of energy. And therefore, it is important to ensure to know that as we import from the Middle East and the Atlantic Basin, that is more reliable than the Middle East in terms of security. Nigeria being a major supplier of crude. Then we process that crude in our refining capacity. So that's where we are. There's no reason to panic. Supply is secured. Now I can tell you up to the end of April, including jet fuel, which has been announced as short. It is not short. The price has grown up dramatically, almost double the price, but there's no shortage of supply of jet fuel in South Africa.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Your time is up. Honorable Hassan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for that response. Minister, given that South Africa's refining capacity has significantly declined, what steps is the department taking to rebuild domestic refining capabilities? I know you touched on it just a moment ago, but also what are you going to be doing to strengthen the role of the South African National Petroleum Company in domestic refining potential in order to reduce our exposure to global supply shocks and price volatility? And what feasibility assessments or financial models have been commissioned to evaluate the viability of repurposing, rehabilitating, or converting existing refinery infrastructure in order to serve its mandate? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
One piece of advice: you don't try to do what you didn't do during normal times because there's a crisis. We bought Sapref after the damage. We're building it. We're not going to doing anything extraordinary to ensure that it supplies crude. We import crude, we process it in what is already there. We'll continue rebuilding Sapref, we'll continue rebuilding Petro SA and increase our refining capacity. But for this crisis that is current, we depend on what is in place, and that is what we should not try to avoid and try to look for something else. That is where we are. We have got a reliable supply of energy, and people should relax and not be panicking. Even companies in the sector do diversify their source of energy, and that's secured. So refining capacity will be grown over a period of time, not now, because you don't try to do something extraordinary because there is a crisis.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable J.R.B. Lorimer.
Thank you, Speaker. It's a two-part question, Minister, so I've got a two-part follow-up. The first part is, how many barrels of crude oil are available right now, approximately, and where are they located? And the second part of my question concerns processed fuels. And can you give us a rough percentage of what fuels have been sourced from which countries over the past couple of months?
Honorable Minister.
In the strategic fuel stock, we have 8 million barrels of oil. That is in the strategic fuel fund, which is actually secured by SFF. It's 8 million barrels. That is not used. It will be used when there is a real crisis. Our supply of energy is divided into two. 60% is imported processed products, and 40% is processed by our own refineries and Sasol. So it's 60-40 in various countries, ranging from month to month. But 60% is imported refined products. 40% we process it in our refineries.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Dr. W.J. Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Minister. I think we are all clear on the fact that there should be no shortages in fuel, as the ships which left has not arrived here yet, those who left when the war started. But the basic problem is with the unavailability of diesel at this moment, which is quite unwarranted. And according to information I had, Petro SA has 25 million litres of diesel available, while they tell wholesalers and retailers that they have no stock. Could you assure us that the department has control over what Petro SA says and what is the truth, and also that the big oil companies do not recover the increase now from wholesalers and again with a slight refund a month later? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister.
We do monitor that situation. We are receiving various reports that say people are holding a diesel in anticipation for increased price. That is illegal. If we find you doing that, we are going to pursue you legally, because it is unfair to want to make profit out of a diesel you bought at a particular price and you hold it so that there's an increase in price and then you'll supply. We have received those instances and we're monitoring and pursue everybody who is reported to be doing that. The reality of the matter is that there's no shortage of diesel, there's no shortage of petrol, there's no shortage of paraffin. there's no shortage of jet fuel at this point in time. Anybody who holds diesel in anticipation for an increase in price is actually behaving in an illegal way.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable WM3.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, in light of the growing concerns around energy security, supply disruptions, and the resilience of or threats to South Africa's petroleum sector, there are obviously concerns around the exogenous shocks and preparedness of our energy sector. Now, Minister, can you inform this House whether your department has conducted a recent risk assessment on the operational readiness of the energy sector to withstand these supply shocks, and what measures are in place to ensure coordination between government, state-owned entities, private sector stakeholders in the event of a supply shock, particularly with regards to energy distribution, price stabilization, and the prevention of fuel shortages at a retail level? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
The reason that we are confident, Honorable Trill, is that our department meets the petroleum producers, all of them, twice a week to monitor the situation. So when we articulate a position, we're not only talking for the state-owned entities, we're talking for everybody, because we meet those companies twice a week. State-owned entities, in terms of trading, Petro SA is doing well, it has always been doing well. What is not working in Petro SA is the refinery, and that refinery must work. South African National Petroleum Company is operational and it is doing the work, and Petro SA is a subsidiary of Sunpack, and therefore Sunpack is providing reliable complementary supply to the private sector suppliers. We meet them twice a week. We understand exactly their position one by one. That is what we do to ensure that there is stability in the supply.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Hassan.
Thank you very much, Minister, for dealing with this issue with the necessary urgency it deserves. Given the current state of strategic reserve days and diversification agreements on the security of supply, what is the current role of the Central Energy Fund and its subsidiaries in actively managing strategic petroleum product stock, as well as the emergency procurement capacity? And B, has the department conducted any joint energy security scenario planning with any of the BRICS partner nations to develop a credible alternative in terms of supply chains that would be activated in the event of a sustained Strait of Hormuz closure? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Let me explain the structure first. Sunpack is a subsidiary of CEF currently until the act that is before Parliament is promulgated. Before that promulgation, the Petro SA, iGas, and SFF are subsidiaries of CEF. Therefore, when you talk of the public sector and supply of energy, you talk of the Central Energy Fund coordinating everybody. That is the first thing. We are talking to the BRICS partners, but that is not the point of that is not the starting point. The starting point is in the Strait of Hormuz. There's only one requirement that they want: go through if you are not a partner or you are in alliance with America or Israel. If you are not in alliance with those, you are allowed through. The second condition is that you will pay us in yuan, not in dollars. And that in itself is a political decision taken by Islamic Iran. That if you go through here, you can't be an ally of a person who have attacked us without us provoking them. You will go through, that's why I said at the beginning, all the cargoes coming to South Africa are allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. There's no fear about that, not unless you want to identify yourself with America or Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to question 2, which has been asked by Honorable N.L. Hlazo-Webster to the Minister of Employment and Labor. The question is with reference to her reply to question 824 on 4 October 2024 regarding the labor activation programs, commitment to recruit 360,000 unemployed persons during the 2024-25 financial year. And in the light of her department's February 2026 statement indicating that 30,876 opportunities have been activated in Gauteng, what is the total number of unemployed persons who have actually been placed into work and or paid employment through the LAP nationally since 2024, and factors that have contributed to the variance between the target and actual placements? Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Hlazo-Webster. Indeed, in 2024 and 25 financial year, the department committed to recruit 360,000 unemployed persons through the labor activation program. To date, the department has recruited 257,208 unemployed persons through this program, of which 161,000 were in paid jobs. The commitment of 360,000 was based on anticipated partnerships with both the public and private sector partners. Members would recall that in 2024, the High Court in Pretoria set aside the 5 billion rand contract between Tuja Holdings and Unemployment Insurance Fund, which was concluded in December 2022. This matter and subsequent due diligence on some of projects which were recommended and approved highlighted the potential pitfalls which some of the contracts were then subjected to further probity to ensure that we check and avoid repeat of the same. The fund focuses on subjecting all contracts to probity and due diligence, and initial fund focusing on control measures, including probity that I've mentioned, and due diligence to safeguard workers' funds. In 2026, unemployed persons placed into work and or paid employment through the employability programs nationally grew to 257,208. This growth is due to pivoting LAB to focus on partnerships that both employ people and are stepping stones to their future employability. The Presidential Youth Employment Initiative's Basic Education Employment Initiative Teacher Assistant Program is a flagship project in this regard. Employment of educator assistants helped to strengthen the learning environment by supporting teachers in the classroom, freeing up time for teaching and providing additional support to learners to improve education outcomes. This program was implemented in collaboration with the Department of Basic Education, the Industrial Development Corporation. It provided important experience and stepping stone towards future opportunities for participants. The implementation of this project commenced in June 2025, successfully recruiting and placing over 155,000 young people in schools as educator assistants. We'll expand partnerships with such large-scale employers based on contracts with clear deliverables and demonstrated capacity to implement. The variance between the initial targets and actual placements can be attributed to mitigating factors such as the risk of non-performance, where an entire cohort is trained but not absorbed. Projects are being implemented in a phased approach, with the rollout of subsequent phases determined by satisfactory absorption rates of the preceding phases. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. Before I go on to Honorable Hlazo-Webster, can I advise members who are sitting on the last rows, particularly on this front portion, I do not want to hear your stories on both my right and left, so you can speak quietly. When you speak louder, I hear the whole conversation about what you are talking about. Honorable Chabalala, I don't want to hear your discussion, so if you can just reduce your voice. Honorable Hlazo Webster.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, you have repeatedly stated that programs like the Labour Activation Program would assist to move us towards the NDP's goal of 6% unemployment. Now, when you look at the actual figures versus what had been forecasted, do you believe that these programs, in the way that they have been designed and framed, will still get us there to that target of 6% unemployment? That's the first. Especially given the dependencies which you have now stated and which you have given as a reason for that gap that you see. And that being as it is, do you then think there is cause to actually review these programs and how they implemented? And secondly, the jobs that you speak of, the numbers that you speak of, can you please define what type of jobs these are? Are they permanent jobs? Are they contract jobs? What is the definition of these jobs that you have alluded to? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Member. Honorable Speaker, if I may remind the House that this Labour Activation Program is an intervention by government that started in 2009 after the economic recession. It is an intervention whilst we wait for the economy to perform. It is not an end unto itself. So there is an expectation that once the economy starts to perform, the labour market will be able to absorb the labour force. But government can't sit back and watch and not come with interventions. It is part of the public employment programs that are done by government across the departments in our country. So it is not on its own expected to take us to the targeted unemployment rate, but we are dependent on the performance of the economy. That's why we are happy with the green shoots that have since reported that our economy is performing well after interventions that were done, in particular by the Ministry of Electricity and Energy, by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Competition, and ensuring that also we improve the international trade in our country and in the globe. So working together with the private sector in particular, that is the one that must play a major role in ensuring that the labor force of our country is absorbed. We are confident if our economy performs, we'll be able to reach the targets. But again, we have since assessed ourselves because in NS 2025-2026 was the only first year to implement a massive program as we budgeted 23 billion for over 3 years, which we could not move 2024-2025, as you can hear the dismal performance of 28,000 as versus with the target of 360,000, because there was an issue of reported fraud, and we had to dedicate 2024-2025 to be the year of probity and reopen the due diligence. But we are not ending there, moving forward. We are even looking at the policy of left to improve it,
Your time
to
is
make
up.
us to assess the desired outcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. MP Motubatsi.
No, thanks, Speaker. Speaker, we welcome the report that is coming through that there's progress that has been registered. But can you, because that's general, we want specifics. From the 33% that we have currently in terms of trying to get our people out of the dungeons of unemployment, what contribution has what you are reporting to the activation to make sure that that percentage goes down? And secondly, is this not another Pawena Popeye program, which is the EPWP program, whereby because we don't have tangible points that says these people are employed and this is where they are employed and they are permanently employed. If you can just give us specific to say they are employed in this particular sector, not just a response that is general in terms of where people must be employed so that our people can be released from this dungeon of unemployment. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Nkosi lungu elibekekileyo. I don't understand when the member says my response is general, because I'm responding to a specific question by the honorable member, and as such, I expect the follow-up question to be in relation to that, because I've got specifics that are giving numbers in responding to the question that says you targeted 360,000 for 2024-2025. How much have you been able to deliver up to so far? So I want to start there. Number two, the issue of the unemployment. We agree that is affecting South Africans, and it's not 33% now, it's 31.4% in terms of the fourth quarter of 2025, in terms of the Stats SA report. But the most affected people is the young citizens who don't have matric or only have matric. It is for that reason that the interventions by the department, which is part of the intervention that is government-wide, we are focusing on skills, which is 6 months for those who have matric or less. We are focusing on learnership. We understand that broadly there is an issue of graduates who are not employed, who as we speak are just above 11% in terms of unemployment rate. So it is important as we intervene that we don't forget those who are in the category that is said to be not in employment, not in education or training. So it is a program of ensuring that we provide or we impart skills to the most needy, not like EPWP, because EPWP, as far as I can recall, does not have a training program. So we are providing skills to these individuals who could not afford to go beyond matric so that at least they can stand a chance to be employed, hence employability. But we did not end there. We ended a clause in our contracts with the service providers to say, you must promise us that after training them, you will at least introduce them to the world of work. Hence the clause that says we require or we expect them to employ them. It is not a permanent solution, but at least if you give a skill, that is what is going to help our citizens so that they stand a better chance to be employed. That's what employability is all about.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Daniels.
Thank you, Speaker, and good afternoon to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, we welcome this program, but I would like to know, did your department go the extra mile to do an assessment to look at sustainability and duration of such opportunities through this program? And if you did not, why not? And if you did, what were your findings around such assessments done pertaining to this program? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Speaker, as I said, the program comes as far back as 2009. The reality is when we stand and look back, we can't fully account for those who participated before. It is for that reason that we used our position as the chairperson of the Government Business Committee that is focusing on jobs, skills, and small and medium enterprises, that we have instructed the Presidency, the Department of Employment and Labour, Higher Education and Training, to help us understand what are the skills that are needed by the labour market, so that the skills that we provide to our people are the skills that are demanded by the labour market. Post the training, there should be no discussion whether people can be absorbed by the labour market or not. And we are starting to do that, and we are improving, as I said. Our policy is being looked at very seriously, because initially we used to throw the net very wide. Generic approach, invite every partner who says, I'm training on this particular skill. We must be, as a department, a unique department that appreciates and understands the labour market. And as such, going forward, we'll only be working with those employers and with those public entities that will be providing skills that are needed by the labour market.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable S.M. Ghana.
One of the skills that's required by the labor market, as announced by the President, is the 10,000 labor inspectors. So the President in the State of the Nation indicated that there will be 10,000 additional labor inspectors that will be appointed in your department. So I want to know, how are you linking this LAP program with the 10,000 opportunities that have now been opened by the president, how many of these graduates or young people unemployed that have gone through the labor activation program will be considered for the opportunity of the labor inspectors as announced by the president in the State of the Nation address?
Just as a reminder, the intervention through the labor activation program is not the formal skill. We've got a lot of those who are graduates who are unemployed. Even before the president made that announcement, we had taken an undertaking that we shall hit 2 birds with 1 stone, looking at the graduates that are not employed and the issue of the lack of capacity in the department when it comes to inspecting the businesses that are non-compliant. Then we came up with a special project in line with the UI Act that says the minister may come up with job creation schemes. And we said we're going to recruit unemployed graduates who qualify in terms of the acts that we are inspecting, your BCA, your COITA, your OHS. So we recruited 20,000. We started a program of recruiting 20,000 inspector interns, who 10,000 was supposed to be recruited this financial year, 10,000 next financial year. So we appreciate the intervention by the president because he understands that the 2,300 inspectors that we have can't inspect satisfactorily the 2.something million companies that are not complying. So we welcome that and will be offering a permanent job, not only linking it to the labor activation program. As I said, labor activation program is targeting those who don't have the post-matric education. So with the labor inspectors, we want graduates who qualify, who shall be employed permanently. And we are working with Treasury to ensure that there is money made available for us to implement the pronouncement by the president through the SONA.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mama Kaula, as you are walking to your seat, I'm sure you will put on your jacket. And my sister there, Honorable Member, who is also having a black t-shirt, if you can put your red jacket, because it has got the emblem of the party at the back, and in terms of our rules, it is not allowed. Thank you very much for complying. Honorable Hlazo Webster.
Minister, the first part of my first supplementary question was based on a statement that you had made more than once, and that was that programs like the labor activation program would contribute to achieving the NDP's unemployment target. And today, you're describing them as temporary interventions while we wait for the economy to perform. And this raises a fundamental concern about the department's approach and how and whether it's actually geared towards structural job creation. That's the first. The second is that the question that I raised was whether the jobs that you are reporting under the program are short-term placements, whether they are permanent, and if you can confirm what proportion of these opportunities actually translate to sustained employment beyond the program period. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Member. You are correct to say these interventions are an attempt to contribute towards the achievement of that rate of unemployment as envisaged in our NDP. But as I said earlier on, they are not the only ones. They are not the major ones. What we want to see is to have our people absorbed by the labor market, depending on the performance and also on the availability of those skilled South Africans. Hence, we appreciate the fact that since the dawn of democracy, many South Africans, in particular black South Africans, have access to education. And as we speak now, the struggle of the youth of 2026 is different from the struggle of the youth of 1976, who struggled for access to education. Now, massive numbers of young South Africans have accessed the post-matric education through the interventions of government. What we would like to see now is them being absorbed. As I said earlier on, their absorption depends on the economy, because it can't be government that is expected to create jobs. It is the private sector, which is also guided or is dependent on the performance of the economy. So we've got the specifics in terms of saying how many are in permanent jobs, how many are in temporary jobs, but our target was to give them a skill, because being a contributor to the economic growth does not necessarily mean you must be a worker, you must get a salary. As we train them, we want to partner with departments like a small business development, so that those who are trained on technical skills, they can be able then to be given the new venture creation skills to run their own businesses. To us, we take that also as a contribution to economy. So we are partnering as we speak with the Department of Small Business Development, so that those who don't want to be employed, they can then work as entrepreneurs. But we can provide information in terms of saying how many are in temporary jobs and how many have been absorbed in permanent jobs, those who have participated in the labor activation program. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We now move to question number 300, which has been asked by Honorable K.H. Wakelin to the Minister of Finance. The question is, in light of the fact that a number of municipalities continue to experience serious governance failures, persistent audit disclaimers, and repeated underspending of infrastructure grants, yet they continue to receive unconditional transfers through the local government equitable share and other allocations within the Division of Revenue framework. What steps has the National Treasury taken to ensure that municipalities that consistently demonstrate weak financial management and poor service delivery outcomes do not continue to receive transfers without stronger accountability and/or corrective measures? Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
If you can speak closer to the mic, Minister.
Andibake?
Usondele kwi-mic kancinci eke.
Okay. National Treasury has implemented several legislative and oversight measures grounded in the Constitution and the Division of Revenue Act to ensure that municipalities with persistent governance failures, weak financial management, and poor spending performance are subject to stronger accountability and corrective action, rather than continuing to receive transfers without consequences. Section 216 of the Constitution requires legislation to establish a national treasury and to prescribe measures to ensure transparency and expenditure control in each sphere of government. In subsection 2, it further provides that National Treasury must enforce compliance with these measures and empowers it to stop the transfer of funds to any organ of state that commits a serious or persistent material breach. This provides the principal basis for intervention in municipalities that consistently demonstrate poor financial management. In line with this constitutional injection, Section 17 of the Division of Revenue Act provides the transferring officer and, where appropriate, the National Treasury to withhold conditional grants allocation for 30 to 120 days where a municipality does not comply with the conditions of the Act. Section 18 of the Division of Revenue Act provides for stopping conditional grant allocations where persistent non-compliance or underperformance continues despite prior intervention. This includes Section 17 of withholding the funds. Section 19 of the Division of Revenue Act allows the National Treasury, once an allocation has been stopped, to reallocate the funds to other provinces or municipalities and to alternative implementing agents, provided the funds are still applied or used for their original purpose and within the same financial year. Section 20 of the Division of Revenue Act enables the National Treasury, on request of the transferring officer and after consultation with the transferring officer, to receive officer and personal treasury convert or allocation from a direct Schedule 5 to an indirect Schedule 6 grant, particularly where municipalities
have a history of poor performance or weak capacity. National departments that act as transferring officers for conditional grants are responsible for monitoring both the financial and non-financial performance of programs funded through this allocation as per Section 10 of the Division of Revenue Act. While unconditional transfers such as the local government equitable share cannot be intervened in the same manner as conditional grants due to their constitutional nature, National Treasury can only stop these transfers through withholding in terms of Section 216, subsection 2 of the Constitution, read together with Section 38, subsection 1 of the Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question is from Honorable K.H. Wicklin.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Minister, thank you. Based on your answer, and as a way by example, in the city of Tshwane, there was a failed water infrastructure tender in Hammanskraal. This led to a further 777 million rand water tanker corruption scandal. Minister, will you commit today, National Treasury, to formally investigate and to enforce decisive action, including the withholding, delaying, or conditioning of equitable shares and grant transfers to the city of Tshwane, and to ensure accountability and to prevent any further misuse of our public funds? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
If indeed there was misuse of public funds, indeed National Treasury will make the necessary intervention. We will investigate. I don't have the information at my disposal at the moment to make a firm commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. M.J. Maswanganyi. Honorable Maswanganyi.
Sorry, Speaker. Let me get my things better organized. I'll come back. Sorry.
I do not hear, Honorable Maswanganyi. What is the problem? Okay, in order not to waste the time, can we allow Honorable Mawutre? I'm not sure who's taking the question on her behalf.
No, thank you, Chair. It's very disappointing for a whole chairperson of the committee to not have his house in order and to be organized. That shows the government that is leading this country. Minister, if you were following Parliament, you would have seen that the President of the Republic, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, agreed with the President of the EFF on insourcing. Now, you often complain about the lack of capacity in municipalities. You also complain about municipalities sending money back to Treasury because they outsource many core services of the municipality. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa stood here a week ago or 2 weeks ago and said he is declaring war on outsourcing, inspired by the insourcing bill of the EFF. The question is, now that the President, who leads your party and government, is agreeing with the EFF on insourcing, what measures are you putting in place for the immediate implementation of insourcing so that we can get rid of outsourcing in government, more especially in our municipalities? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
I do not know the relevance of this question to the performance of municipalities. That's what I'm dealing with at the moment. Thank you.
Order. Honorable Member Ntlangwini.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, we have dealt with this several times, and we are back here yet again with a minister that are refusing to answer and are running away from answering a question. The question is clear. And if you didn't hear it, you could have just said, I didn't hear what the Honorable Lonzi would have asked. You would have repeated it. But for you to do what
Honorable
we're doing,
member, you speak through the speaker, and it's a point of order you are raising.
sorry, Speaker,
Yes,
my apologies.
and I think the point of order
But-
you have raised.
Thank you, Speaker. But we can't deal with this all the time with ministers that are
And I
bluntly
advise-
refusing to answer. This question, the follow-up, is relevant to the question that is asked. And so for him to
Honorable-
ask, to say that,
Tlangwini, can you take a seat?
for what now?
I think the point you have raised, and allow the speaker to rule.
No, but Speaker, you must rule him
No,
out
no,
of
no.
order. He must answer.
Allow the speaker to rule. You have raised your point of
Must
order.
answer.
Thank you very much. Honorable Tlangwini, I've heard your question, and I also heard the question from Honorable Lonzi. I also heard the minister's answer. And you would recall that when we dealt with these questions of quality of answers from ministers, I also cautioned that as members, we should also have our questions appropriate. So what the minister is saying is, in respect of the main question, he doesn't know how the question asked by Honorable Lonzi is relevant to what he's supposed to answer. So I'm saying on both counts, we have a responsibility as members to also make sure that our follow-up follows on the main question. And that's what also Honorable Member raised, Honorable Minister of Labour, in answering one of the questions. And I would like to point to you, Honorable Lonzi, I've seen your hand. Rule 142, subsection 6, says a supplementary question must arise directly from the original question and the reply given thereto, and may not constitute a new question. And several times, and I think members must also appreciate, ministers have actually at times gone even beyond what is the original question to satisfy ministers, members' questions. So I'm just saying, when we make that criticisms to ministers, the other fingers must surely point at us and at times how we raise those questions. Honorable Lonzi, what is your question?
No, thank you very much, Speaker. The minister must not cowardly run away from a question. Yes. Speaker, if you look at the main question, and I'd advise that you look at it with me, it speaks about governance failures. If you look at the third last sentence, it speaks about financial management and poor service delivery outcomes. That speak directly to the services that are being provided by the municipality. So if you are talking insourcing and outsourcing, that service delivery, it speaks to financial mismanagement, because it's the AG that says our municipalities are overusing consultancy agencies and they are not delivering services to our people. So you can't say a question of insourcing which speaks to service delivery is not relevant to the main question. Minister, stop cowardly running away from this question.
Can you please allow
Answer the question
to rule? Honorable Lonzi, with all due respect, in trying to argue, your question on insourcing and the way you framed your question, it was a totally new question. No. Honorable members. No. Honorable Tlangwini. The question, the way it was framed, clearly related to an insourcing issue. It wasn't about the weakness of municipalities. Let me advise you, Honorable Tlangwini, if the member at least indicated that, in our view, part of the weakness with service delivery arises from insourcing, then you will have a relevant question. But for now, I hear you, it will depend on the minister whether he wants to deal with the new question, but it is a new question, Honorable Member. Minister, you want to deal with the new question as it has been raised?
Not at all.
Honorable Maswanganyi, have you sorted your papers?
Thank you, Speaker, and sorry for the IT glitch that I experienced. Minister, National Treasury has adopted a new approach of moving from oversight to active structural interventions. What shift will be implemented to support local municipalities in contrast to the measures being undertaken through the performance-based conditional grants to strengthen metro trading services? And what lessons can be drawn from the support of eThekwini? Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Minister.
Let me start with eThekwini. The lessons in eThekwini has been the effectiveness of coordinating across the board. What happened in eThekwini, the president set up what is called a presidential task team, which mobilized all stakeholders in eThekwini to work for a common purpose. And that, to me, is quite an important strategy. We need to draw a lesson from that. In terms of the reforms in municipalities, you'll recall that in the metro, we've set what is called the metro trading services, whose intention is to assist metros to begin to make sure that the utilities that the municipalities and metros use are given an autonomy so that they should be able to function as business units. That is an important point. In terms of the different municipalities, but in particular the local ones, some of them do not have the capacity to perform. As part of that, we are assisting the municipalities via, for instance, a district municipality in certain circumstances where the district municipality is also doesn't have the capacity. We'll be bringing in some of the state-owned enterprises such as SMISA Development Bank to assist them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sangwini. I'll come to you, Honorable Swart.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, this is quite concerning. It can't be a minister that determined which question is new and which question is old. It can't be them. We invited ministers here to answer questions. So it can't be them that determines to us which questions to ask and which questions not to ask. It is quite concerning that the Honorable Lonze have asked a question and he have taken time from his constituency to construct this question. And then the minister just decides cowardly, runs to the corner and say, no, it's a new question. It can't happen. It can't be determined by the minister to say, this one I don't answer and that one I'm not answering. Then otherwise he's declaring your work that you are not competent to be a speaker. It should have been ought to be you to have raised that from the get-go, not him.
Can you please take your seat? I've dealt with that matter and that matter is closed. I don't think it is of relevance now. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Minister, the ACDP shares the deep concerns about the dire financial state of many of our municipalities, including metros, and basic services such as water, sanitation are, as a result, not provided. Now, Honourable Minister, the ACDP believes that revenue collected for a specified function must be used for that specific function before any cross-subsidization occurs. And this is a foundational principle of fiscal integrity. For example, Joburg Water receives 11.9 billion rand from revenue, but only 1.3 billion is allocated for capital expenditure. This cannot be correct. Honourable Minister, what will you be doing to ensure that cross-subsidization does not occur to the detriment of the people and the taxpayers, and the detriment within service delivery is not provided? Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Honourable Member, the metro trading services system is intended to deal precisely with that question. Its intention is to say ring-fence revenue from the water utility, ring-fence revenue from the electricity utility as separate entities. And any revenues generated there must be brought back to sustain those entities. To the extent that there's profit that can be given to the municipality for cross-subsidization, that should happen. But in principle, that's the intention of the Metro Trading Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wakelin.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Minister, let me first compliment you on the 12 billion rand saving on the TARS. Honourable Minister, given the introduction of the targeted and responsible saving, TARS as a mechanism to enforce fiscal discipline and reprioritise expenditure, how is National Treasury applying TARS in the context of transfers to municipalities, in particular in relation to the issuing of conditional grants, transfers, and can the Minister indicate whether any municipality have had their allocation reduced, delayed or withheld under TARS due to the persistent non-performance, weak financial management or corruption? And if not, why has the TARS mechanism not been utilised to prevent continued funding of failing municipalities? Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Minister.
The honourable member will know that the targeted responsive spending is a new instrument we've developed. And therefore, we have started that new instrument at a national level. But to the extent that we're dealing with non-performing municipalities, the honourable member, I'm sure, must have said that even in newspapers, with Salga and everybody attacking me, precisely for utilizing Section 216 to withdraw funds for municipalities that are non-performing. And I've done that in several times, even in December. So we have applied Section 216 to deal with those municipalities. But we've taken a view that in certain circumstances, let me just give you an example. In 2024, we given certain municipalities a disaster funding. In 2025, the same municipalities were affected by disaster. We had to pay the same municipalities, only to find that the 2024 resources has not been utilized and doesn't really relate to the capacity of those municipalities. That's why we've decided that in municipalities such as those, we need, it's not that money is being misused, it's a question of capacity. Where it is a question of capacity, we intend utilizing other district municipalities or certain state agencies that have got the capacity to help those institutions, because it's not mismanagement, it's a capacity issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, we'll now move to question number 261, which has been asked by Honourable N.Q. Mvana to the Minister of Electricity and Energy. The question is given that the free basic electricity allocation has remained at 50 kilowatts for several years without revision, and considering the increased need for electricity, by what date will the FBE allocation for the poor and indigent be increased, and what is the envisaged time frame for the implementation of the revised FBE allocation? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Please allow me to extend my well wishes. Happy birthday to Honorable Steenhuisen on the occasion of his 50th birthday. I wish you good health. I wish you wisdom. May the Almighty continue to bless and protect you. Just to say thank you very much.
He must get all the Uber Eats he needs.
That's rude. That's rude. Chair, my time there.
Sorry, Minister. Apologies. Your time is allocated. You are fine. You can continue.
No, thank you very much. Just to say thank you very much to Honorable Mvana for the brilliant question. Maybe just to say the following in answering the question, that 1994 marks a point of political inflection, the victory of the democratic project over a system that was categorized as a crime against humanity. The democratic government then took a decision that one of its objectives is to ensure that we are able to achieve universal access And on the back of that, we've been able to register tremendous progress. The levels of penetration have moved from 38%, and now as I speak to you, they are sitting at 94%. Then the second observation that was made in the life of the democratic project in 2003 was that the electricity, although it was now available to many of the households, it remained expensive, and therefore access was not democratized. And on the back of that, we introduced a policy of free basic electricity for indigent households. And we pegged that at 50 kilowatt per hour per month. And that was on the basis of science. They looked at the profile of consumption, and that's how we arrived at that number. 23 years later, that number is no more relevant because the profile of consumption has changed. An average poor household now has got a television. Some of them have bought electric kettle. They've got refrigerators, so the consumption has changed. So as part of our intervention, Honorable Mvana, we are revising that number. But in revising that allocation, we are not going to place a burden on the fiscals because it's under constraint. As announced yesterday, we'll come out with a policy on electricity pricing policy. We are also dealing with the question around first, the allocation of that free basic electricity. We are arguing that it should be increased. And we have a number of what it should look like. We will announce it when we come out without placing a burden on the national fiscal. So it will increase. And secondly, we are designing instruments on how we are going to support that. The primary driver of electricity is the cost of primary energy. And in that policy framework, we say something about how we deal with that primary energy. And once the public has given their comments, we'll then answer your second question, Honorable Mvana, on when it's going to start. Yes, it will increase. It will not place a burden on the fiscals. We are going to use a multiplicity of primary energy sources. And in that way, the ideal of universal access, electricity that is affordable, will be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Before I recognize there's a member that lost their car keys inside the house. So if anyone would find the car keys, can you please show to the Parliament staff, and then they will bring them forward. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Mvana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, taking into account of the revised free basic electricity, what differentiates free basic electricity allocation model? Has the department considered, rather than a flat rate increase, that might fail to address the energy poverty and indigent household, which will remain off-grid? What complementary non-grid households support benefit equal from free basic electricity policy revision? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Mvana. Yes, I think in the quest of broadening access, will answer the quantum of free basic electricity, will also answer the question of universal access. Remember that there's about 1.69 million people or so households that still don't have access to electricity. So we're going to address that. We are using modern technology, a hybrid of solar, PV, and also battery. We have done it already on a high scale. In Musina, the Madava villages, we are providing that. We are expanding that across the country. Our ambition is to ensure that we reach out to about 50 villages. The second one you'll see when the policy comes out is the use of various energy sources. We think that there's a strong case for us to replace heating or cooking from using on-grid solutions to going to other sources like gas. So we're talking with the industry on the sourcing of that gas, ensure that there's sufficient reticulation. So we're putting a different...
Thank you, Honorable Minister. In light of the prolonged stagnation of the free basic electricity allocation at 50 kilowatt hour, which you know, right now it's not even passed over to our people. They're not getting it, right? What specific fiscal policy and policy constraints have prevented its adjustment to reflect the current household energy needs? And what measures are being taken to overcome these barriers? 50 kilowatt, you know, in our houses, all of us, it's less than 3 hours. And we are passing it to the poor. So in light of that, what are the barriers currently? Measures taken to make sure that we overcome these barriers? Thank you so much.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nchabileng, for that brilliant question. So 2 parts to your question. The first one is that it's not passed on. And that observation is correct. There's 2.1 million houses that qualify for free basic electricity. But only a fraction, 400,000 of them get that free basic electricity. And yet the Minister of Finance on an annual basis makes the transfer to municipalities, but that doesn't find its way to the end consumer. So what is the first correction we're making? The installation of smart meters to remotely load this free basic electricity at the beginning of every month. We don't have to go through a conduit, call a municipality, because our relationship is that with the customer. So that's the first one. The second part to your question is, what is the fiscal pressure? What is my critique of how we've been relating with this question was that we're looking at the Minister of Finance to support this increase. And your observation is correct. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of sacrifice from middle-income houses for them to have an appreciation of what 50 kilowatt day looks like. But for the poor, it's a meaningful intervention. So we've been looking for fiscal support. Our approach is that, no, we don't have to bother the Minister of Finance. Our answer is in the configuration of the mix. Technology allows us, and we've got real examples now. When we go into villages where we have installed microgrids, the hybrid of solar and PV, we are able to suppress the cost of electricity. So it's not about a fiscal allocation, it's about a choice of technology, because we have accepted that in that calculus of how you determine the tariff, as you know, as a scholar of energy complex, is that the primary driver is the cost of energy, and that's why we are going to use our endowments to suppress that increase. And in this way, we think we should be able to achieve our ambition. But when the policy goes out, many people like yourselves will make that contribution to enrich the conversation, and I'm sure that we are going to find a cogent answer that is efficacious in responding to this question, Honorable
Thank you
Chairman.
very much. The fourth supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Tring.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Minister, the ACDP understands the need to bridge the gap between the indigent and the more advantaged in society, because electricity is, in every household, is a transformative catalyst. Now, Minister, municipal indigent policies for free basic electricity differ from one municipality to the other. The national framework, while guiding indigent policy, allows municipalities to implement their own indigent policies. For example, Rain Konyeni municipalities' indigent policy requires households to prove income below a threshold to qualify. Now, will your department standardize these criteria nationally to ensure an equitable access to free basic electricity? And if yes, by when? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Honorable Thing, an exceptionally great question, and I think it's beginning also to direct the conversation. I agree with your characterization of electricity at the household level. As you put it, is a transformative catalyst. And I think that the more the democratic state denies the poor their access to electricity, it undermines their ability to enjoy the dividends of the victory of the democratic project. So it's an indictment, if you like, on the democratic project. And it's something that we seek to address. So to your question, you are absolutely right. So what the policy, one of the arguments we are making there, it's about the standardization of what it means to be indigent. The definition of indigent, and really it's a function of the earning capacity at the household level. So we need to determine what that threshold is. You are right. When you move from one municipality to the other, the number keeps on changing. The long and short of it is that, yes, there will be that standardization. And the answer by when, it's a function, like I said, will take the policy for public consultation. And I'm sure that the minds like yourselves will make that contribution, including in the portfolio committee. It is the richness in the diversity of the contributions that is going to ensure that we have something that is cogent, that is solid, and that is really resilient going into the future. So once we approve that, then it will come into place. But thank you very much for the extraordinarily great questions. Thanks.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Mvana.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I hear you saying about going to municipality by municipality. I just want to ask, what other concrete measures will you put in place to standardize and enforce the implementation of this free basic electricity across these municipalities, knowing exactly that there are many, I will say, exclusion of many qualifying indigent and poor household? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Well, thank you very much again for a great question, Honorable Mvana. As a former mayor, once a mayor, always a councillor. So I'm always on the side of municipalities, so I might be bringing my own prejudices. So first is that municipalities have original powers when it comes to distribution. So if you go to the Constitution, it does say that's an area that is the exclusive domain of municipality. The anomaly that you are seeing where ESCOM is reticulating is as a result of historical legacies and invitation by municipalities to say we don't have the capacity to execute this. What is the bigger point I'm making? Is that we'll determine a policy at a national level. The only lever we have in how that policy gets to be exercised is how the Minister of Finance is going to ensure that that allocation filters through to the end consumer. So in that sense, we need to have that relationship with municipalities. From my engagement with SALGA, we are aligned on this question. But also the exploitation of technology, like I said, smart meters. It means that from the National Treasury, once that allocation comes, we are able to directly subsidize the end consumer without having to go through the conduit of the municipality. And we find that that money has to be redirected to other spending pressure of municipalities and undermining the efficacy of this instrument. So yes, standardization will happen, and how we get the money to the end consumer, it's something we'll work out with National Treasury so that this program is not undermined. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Lonzi.
Chair, can you tell Gogo Kotongwana to be inspired by the Minister of Energy, who doesn't run away from questions, irrespective of how difficult they may be?
Honorable Lonzi, that's not a point of order and is not sustained. Honorable members, as I had requested before about a loss of key, I have been informed that the key has been found in the House. Thank you. We now move to question number 282, which has been asked by Honorable L.D. Selepe to the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources. The question is, given the current volatility in the global petroleum sector, which Brent crude features surging over 13% and threats to the Strait of Hormuz disrupting shipping and driving up fuel prices, what measures has his department taken to mitigate the impact of the price hikes on South African consumers, whether there are any plans to review the fuel pricing mechanisms of the Republic and or explore alternative energy sources? If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant details? The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It's a conflict of the magnitude of what we see in an oil-rich region like the Middle East was bound to have an impact on us. Whether it is Russia, Ukraine, or it is Iraq, once there is a war in the world, because we're part of the globe, it has an impact on us. This one is particularly unique in the sense that the region that is affected is an oil-rich region. And we source a lot of energy from them, and therefore its impact on us is unavoidable. Therefore, the only way that we would save ourselves from this is to drill, and drill in the Orange Basin, drill in the Karoo for shale gas, drill everywhere, and produce our own petroleum and not be overly dependent on imported processed products. If we would do that, we would overcome and reduce the risk that is inherent now. Secondly, the question of the oil price is a unique one in the sense that it's not determined in the country. It is a crude oil pricing that is announced globally. And therefore, we have to announce that and adjust to that. We are indeed looking into revisiting the system we're using. But we must get a system that will give us an advantage, where we actually review the regulatory accounting system methodology that we utilize as a department and introduce a new system. But that is in the long term. We tried something, it didn't work. We will try everything else to adapt. But more important to me is that I must hasten to add that crude oil prices form the basis of the price of mechanism. So once you announce that crude oil is at $116 a barrel, you must know that it talks to you directly, doesn't talk to everybody else. Sometimes there's an expectation that we'll do this and that. Last time, we did take some strategic fuel stock and cushioned the impact on the individual. I still owe the Minister of Finance money for that. 6 billion, yes, I owe him 6 billion. I still owe him, and therefore if we take that route, we will know that we are actually indebting our department to the Treasury, and that will continue all the time, and the barrels will not increase automatically.
Thank you. Honorable members, I have been informed that Honorable Nchabeleng will take charge of the first question on behalf of Honorable Silepe in accordance with Rule 13710A. I now recognize Honorable Nchabeleng.
Honorable Chair, thank you so much. Minister, given that Minister has previously announced various interventions, such as the exploration of the Strategic Fuel Fund, the introduction of Petroleum Products Amendment Act, and the expansion of the Clean Fuels Program, can the Minister provide a specific timeline with measurable milestones for when these interventions will tangibly reduce the volume of refined petroleum imports and what the financial implications are for the fiscals should these timelines not be met, given the current crisis in the Middle East? Thank you so much.
Honorable Minister.
There are a few interventions that are necessary. Starting point, drill. And you know, you are a South African, every time we drill oil or gas, we end up in court. And the court system is long. And that actually repel all the investors from investing in oil and gas. That is one issue that we should overcome. One way of overcoming that is to develop a system where there are special courts dealing with environmental disputes. If we do that, we'll actually go a long way in doing that. Number two, it requires us to increase our refining capacity. If we don't increase refining capacity, we are having an inherent risk in terms of the supply of energy sources. So the question of refining capacity is quite important. That's why we have committed ourselves to rebuilding SAPSEF and actually revive Petro SA. But we need more than that, because at this current rate where our refining capacity only supply 40% of energy, the risk is inherent. So we'll have to do all those interventions to ensure that we cushion our economy from external pressures of wars.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Sinne.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, noting that South Africa is generally a price taker in the global petroleum markets due to its reliance on imported refined petroleum products, what has been some of the department's practical steps to strengthening the strategic role of SSF and SANPEC by maintaining buffer stocks of petroleum products to mitigate sharp price increases and potential supply disruptions? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, the first issue that we should understand is that correctly, you're stating correctly when you say we're a price taker, because crude oil price is not set country by country. It's announced globally, it impacts on everybody. But if we have our own sources of energy, we can mitigate the increase in prices. But when we don't have, we can't mitigate. We are actually vulnerable. That is the first thing. The second thing is that we do have the strategic fuel stock that we have kept to cushion ourselves in case of crisis. That is an intervention that actually minimizes the risk of an attack on us by fuel prices and fuel supply. That is another mitigation strategy. But basically what is important is that our sector must be able to generate its own sources of energy. So the question of the Orange Basin and the question of the Karoo and shale gas are alternatives that we must look at seriously to cushion ourselves from the risk. If we don't do it, the risk is high. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Tlangwini.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, I see that you are inspired by Donald Trump that say you must drill and drill until drilling is no longer. And then secondly, to that Minister, Minister, it was in your cabinet, or when you were even the Secretary General of the ANC, when the former minister sold our reserves of oil, strategic reserves of oil. So what steps are you going to take immediately, Minister, so that we can stop this thing of only operating when we are in crisis mode? Are you going to take to ensure that the fuel hike doesn't suffer already the existing people within our communities that are already struggling to make ends meet, and ensuring that also that the specifications of the fuel that are already there are not compromised, because we do know your department are also struggling at times with the fuel specifications that are compromised. So what steps are you going to ensure that the fuel specifications are not compromised and stockpiling is up here? Thank
Honorable Minister.
The difference between being operational and being a spectator is that you can theorize anything and say anything you think. But when you're dealing with the reality practically, you know what to do. That's why I said we're having 8 million barrels of crude oil in reserves for strategic stock. That is what we have. It is not what it should be, because we used part of it when there was a crisis before, and we used part of that stock is still there. Now, what I cannot do is to try and give answers for errors committed by predecessors of me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to attempt that. All I'm saying is that we must drill. I'm not imitating with Trump. I've been saying that even when everybody was saying fossil fuel must be left. Price of coal is good now. It's at $129 a ton. It's going to 139. So therefore, people who wrote off coal did that prematurely is still around here. And therefore, energy is going to be our source of energy as coal. That is what Sasol is doing. And that's why 2 weeks ago, we were in Sasol launching a destoning plant to remove stone from coal for processing for internal consumption. So we're doing a number of interventions to ensure that the risk is minimized.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The fourth supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Maki.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, in light of the recent domestic pressures, including rising transport costs, food price inflation, and the disproportionate burden on rural provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape, how is your department strengthening coordination with National Treasury and other relevant departments to ensure that fuel price shocks do not further entrench inequality and undermine economic recovery at the household levels? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Yabona ke kawudibanisa ii-visitors nabavakashi uzasenzela i-confusion, because udibanisa i-question ye-cost of living in general with the price of fuel. The price of fuel that we're dealing with today is an outcome of a war that is ongoing in the Middle East. And that should be separated and be ring-fenced, and appreciate what we can do and appreciate what we cannot do. Because we are part of the globe. If there is a war on Iran, that war will affect us. When cargoes can't go through the Strait of Hormuz, those cargoes won't come here. The price of petrol is going to go up. 1st of April, we must expect a price increase. It will come, and that war, we must all pray, it must be shorter, and therefore the price will come down. Other issues will be multiplier effects of an increased price of petroleum, and therefore that you cannot afford. That's why I put a disclaimer from the beginning that there's very little we can do with a war that is in the Middle East. We're in South Africa. To us, we are dealing with consequences rather than the origin.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Nchabeleng.
Gwaza Mkonto. Gwaza. Honorable Minister, thank you. You are aware that the current moratorium to stop the drilling of shale gas is stopped by your own government. So noting that the review of the fuel pricing model, specifically the scrutinization of the basic fuel price, BPF components such as the regulatory accounting system, RAS, and the pipeline tariff determination, has been under discussion for several years. Will the minister confirm which specific stakeholders and regulatory body is responsible for the delay in finalizing this review, Minister? And what consequences management has been applied to ensure that this transition to our own energy reliance
solutions is no longer held hostage by legacy pricing structures. Thank you so much, Minister.
Honorable Minister.
I will take the liberty to respond to you, Chaveling, though your question is irrelevant. But I'm going to give you the answer. Okay, I'm going to give. There you are. EFF shout and it is a pain. EFF, if we don't shout. Now, Mamela Gebut. I don't know if you know Kutikuko court ruling on the moratorium. That court ruling says we must expect regulation from TFFE. We have not received those regulations from TFFE. It's not a government decision, it's another arm of the state called the judiciary that has imposed that ruling. We are engaging with the FFE. We're about to resolve that issue. Once we get those regulations, we'll lift the moratorium. Once we lift the moratorium, we'll see if there's interest in drilling for shale gas or not. That will be determined by the needs and the appetite that people have. I hope you will have partners who want to drill. Then we will drill. To me, that is what will reduce the risk. Let's drill in the Karoo, let's drill in the orange mouth, and we'll reduce the risk. It is not going to eliminate it because we're part of the world.
So you agree that your government is holding up the process?
Honorable Chabeling. Thank you, honorable members. We now move to question number 320, which has been asked by Honorable OMC Mautwe to the Minister of Finance. The question is whether, considering that Western Cape High Court has ruled that Section 7.4 of the Value Added Tax Act, Act 89 of 1991, is invalid and not consistent with the Constitution of the Republic. 1996, he will appeal the judgment since he was the first respondent. If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant details? The Honorable Minister.
This is the easiest one. If you read the question, it is whether he will appeal. That's the question. So here's the answer. The declaration of invalidity of Section 7, subsection 4 of the Value Added Tax 1991 in the order of the Western Cape High Court is subject to the confirmation or otherwise by the Constitutional Court. I have sought legal advice and will make a decision based on that advice. At the moment, I've not firmed up a decision. Thank you.
Honorable members, I have been informed that Honorable Matiase will take charge of the question on behalf of Honorable Mautwe in accordance with Rule 13710A. I will now recognize Honorable Matiase.
Thank you so much, House Chair. According to the Minister, this is the most simplest questions, but he had to read the pre-prepared notes from officials. Yeah. But however, Honorable House Chair, may I quickly hasten to say that the Western Cape High Court was patently clear that Section 7.4 of the Value Added Tax was and is invalid, and your actions were inconsistent with the Constitution. So, Minister, don't you think that you should be prioritizing and upholding the Constitution rather than defending and maintaining the fiscal measures which are rigid in their nature, are inconsistent with the Constitution, whereas do not advance the aspirations of the working class and the poor? Don't you think that is a necessary thing that you ought to do than to enforce these draconian, rigid fiscal measures which really, from the deepest of your conscience, you know that this is not in the interest of the poorest of the poor? Can you please answer these questions? And provide
Honorable
detailed
Minister.
I'm dealing, the honorable member is asking me a moral question. And I'm dealing with a legal issue. And that legal issue suggests that I'm not making any decision that I'm going to continue or not. All that I'm saying is that I'm waiting for a legal opinion which will guide me, even if I were to comply with the court decision. The court requires me 24 months to make necessary changes in the act. So even if I were to do that, I would still need a legal opinion to proceed in that direction. So I can't answer the moral question. I'm going to answer the legal question before me, which will help me to give effect to the court decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Tlangwini.
House Chair, with all due respect, it seems that the Minister of Finance don't want to be here today and he don't want to answer any of our questions. And this can't persist, it can't continue. With all due respect, we have taken our time to construct these questions from our constituencies. Even on the one that the Honorable Mautwe have given to him on written format to respond here in the House today, he gave a response that is like less than even, there was no answer. It can't continue like this. The minister don't want to answer any question today. It's either he tell us that he don't want to answer and then we put it over to another time, but this can't persist. He don't get to decide which ones he answer and which ones he doesn't get to answer. He doesn't get to decide. He's invited here on our authority. This is our house, and we ought to be protected. Please.
Thank you, Honorable Tlangwini. In response to that, though it didn't need a response because you didn't ask maybe a question, but I will say that the minister, I think, alluded to the fact that he is still waiting for the legal advice and he will not then answer a question that is legally informed with a moral question of how then does he perceive the Constitution. So I heard the response from the minister. Maybe what I will advise is, if maybe you did not get the response of the full question of which part that you did not get full satisfaction, maybe if he has reserved time, I will then afford him the time to do so. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable N.A. Galega Mazibugo.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of Honorable Galega Masibuko, I'm Honorable Dipuo Ntuli. My question is, various money bills empower the minister to adjust tax rates through regulations. Is the National Treasury reviewing other tax bills that have a similar provision impacted by the Western Cape High Court judgment? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Those will be consequential amendments arising out of the decision of the court. Those will be consequential amendments. But for me to get into consequential amendments, I need first clarity on to what I'm going to do with the existing judgment. And then once I have clarity what to do with the existing judgment, then I'll have to then say what are the consequential amendments we need to give effect to. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Berg.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, the original question stated that Section 7.4 of the VAT Act is unconstitutional and that you do not have the power to unilaterally increase value-added tax. A subsequent and related court ruling indicated that you do have the power to unilaterally and suddenly increase or decrease fuel levies. One of your GNU partners proposed a funded model this morning on how we can avoid a cost of living catastrophe. Will you use your court-approved powers to decrease the fuel levies by 50% before prices go up next week?
Honorable Minister.
I'm not dealing with the fuel levy now. The question arises out of the VAT case. The question arises out of the VAT case whether I'm going to read it properly. The question is whether I'm going to appeal that decision. I said I'm answering that question. I'm saying I've not made a decision to appeal that decision. That question raises a new question.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The fourth supplementary question will be asked by Honorable S. Zibi.
So, Minister, I know you might say that this is a new question, but it's related. We have entered an era wherein tax proposals will be subjected to court challenges, and to the point that Honorable Minister Mantashe was raising around the litigious nature in South Africa. So one of the tax proposals that it's on the table is the national online gambling tax. How are you going to ensure that this particular tax is not subject to prolonged court processes that delays its implementation? Thank you very much,
Honorable Minister.
Let me start by saying I'm appealing to colleagues. There's a question which is coming. That question is posed by Honorable Bateman. It's too generic on taxes. If people want to ask me about any other taxes, whether a gambling tax, whether the fuel tax, when we debate that question, because it's asked me a tax question which is general, I'm appealing that one as well is irrelevant in the current discussion.
Honorable members, the last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Matiase.
Thank you so much, House Chair. Minister, against the background of the Western Cape High Court ruling, and given the recent increase in the fuel levy, which follows a similar regressive impact and the draconian fiscal measures we were stopped from imposing to suffocate the poor, will you reconsider and reverse the decision to increase the fuel levy? How does your government intend to shield the poor households and the economy from potentially severe consequences, particularly in the light of the escalating geopolitical conflicts, including developments in the Middle East with the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz? Please answer this question, otherwise you will be provoking us.
Honorable Minister.
Do not threaten about provocation. I've got to answer the questions that are posed to me and relevant here. Don't threaten. I was going to be saying this time, you know that now you are wanting me to withdraw what I was going to do. What I was going to do is that despite this fact, I'm going to be generous to you. Now you want me to withdraw that generosity. No, I'm not patronizing.
Don't patronize us. Answer
Honorable Minister,
threaten me.
Honorable Minister,
Yeah.
Honorable Matiase, please, can we give an opportunity to the Honorable Minister to respond?
Yeah, I'm not going to leave under trust that I'm going to provoke people. I'm going to answer a question because it is appropriate. I'm going to answer a question because it's appropriate. Now, I was going to say, Mr. Matthias, in this particular case, I was going to say, although this question is there, because of this public interest, I'm going to respond to it. Because of this public interest, and say, Cabinet has set up a committee, and that committee is going to look at the impact of the war in general, and look at the impact. Among these terms of reference is to say, what is it suggesting government to do on the fuel price? It's going to be not a decision of the Minister of Finance alone. That matter is getting attention, and I'm answering it because it's in the public interest. That the public has got to know that government is seized with this matter. Minister Mantashe, Minister Ramkopa, and myself are members of that committee. We are going to make the appropriate recommendation to government of how to deal with that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, we now move to question number 262, which has been asked by Honorable S.W. Davids to the Minister of Agriculture. The question is whether, with regard to the 24 February 2026 briefing to the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, where officials reported 1,072 confirmed foot and mouth disease outbreaks and 714 suspected outbreaks, alongside with risk-based distribution of the first 1 million imported vaccine doses, he has also set a public target of vaccinating 80% of the national cattle herd by 31 December 2026. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the relevant details? The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to the Honourable Davids for the question. Yes, it has been scientifically proven that if 70 to 80% of the susceptible population, particularly in high-risk areas, are vaccinated, the disease can stop spreading. The target of December 2026 to have vaccinated 80% of the national herd is reasonable and within our rollout strategy. This rollout strategy leverages both public and private veterinarian practitioners. It will also have achieved the risk-based vaccination together with the attendance of emergencies within a reasonable radius, which is normally 10 kilometers around the infection, and that this will arrest the spread of the disease. This is backed up by the procurement of batches of millions of vaccines. We've imported so far this year 1.5 million Biogenesis Bago vaccines, 1.5 million Junevax vaccines, and there are more arriving in the coming weeks. These have been rolled out across the country by private veterinarians, private animal health technicians, working alongside state veterinarians and state animal health technicians. The number of vaccines that we intend to import will ensure that we meet the first stage of the strategy that we've implemented in South Africa to beat foot and mouth disease once and for all, arresting both the current outbreak, but also allowing us to transition to a status of FMD-free with vaccination, which will then open up 94 different markets around the world for South Africa's red meat products that have been closed for the past 2 decades. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable S.W. Davids.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, vaccinating 80% of the herd by the year end is a significant and ambitious goal. What concrete plan has the department put in place to ensure the targets, especially to reach farmers in all provinces, including those in the remote and rural areas, and how will progress be monitored to ensure the targets is met? Will the Minister submit to provide regular updates to Parliament on the FMD, vaccination rollout and outbreak status, for example, quarterly reports and presentations of herd herd vaccinated and new outbreak numbers so that we can track whether the campaign is on schedule and hold the department accountable for delays? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. We can do one better than that. I think, as the Honourable David knows, the Department of Agriculture now appears weekly at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, at the request of the Portfolio Committee, where the figures of outbreaks, the heat map of the recent outbreaks, as well as the rollout progress on the vaccines is presented to the committee so that the committee itself can be updated and appraised of where we're at. I believe fundamentally that given the volumes of vaccines that can now flow into the country as a result of us breaking the monopoly of a single vaccine supplier into the country, that the type of quantities that we can see now, batches of 5 million, batches of 6 million, will take us way into the target of 28 million vaccines that we wish to have implemented by December. What that means that not only would all the national herd have been vaccinated once, but the whole national herd would have then received a second vaccination. Working together with the provincial departments of agriculture, we have been rolling these out, and it has been successful largely to date. There have been some teething issues in some of the provinces, but we've been working together with our private sector partners, as well as the provincial state veterinarians, to ensure that we can overcome these obstacles. This is the first time in South Africa's history that we've embarked upon such a large rollout of vaccination in the agriculture sector. And of course, there will be teething problems, but that is why I've created an industry coordinating council alongside a ministerial task team made up of scientists, academics, and others from both the private and public sector to ensure that we're able to iron out any of the issues as they relate to rollout in the various provinces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Matopa.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, the foot and mouth disease outbreak and vaccine shortage reflect the serious failure in preparedness. Why was the country not adequately prepared with sufficient vaccine stock despite known outbreak risk? Additionally, how is the department prioritizing the limited vaccine supply to affected areas? And what support measures are being provided to impacted farmers, particularly small-scale and emerging farmers?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much for the question, Honourable Member. It's a very good question because what has happened over the last 2 decades is that South Africa's biosecurity systems have been allowed to lapse. And South Africa lost the ability to be able to produce its own foot and mouth disease vaccines. What we have now done since coming into office is prioritized re-establishing South Africa's biosecurity ecosystem, and it starts with reinforcing the work being done by the ARC and OBP and recapacitating those operations that have been neglected and that have been damaged by acts of omission and commission over a number of years. We're investing heavily in both of those, improving their capacity to the point now where the first 12,900 of locally manufactured vaccines were able to roll off the shelf. South Africa's traditionally relied on vaccines from Botswana, the Botswana Vaccine Institute, and they were able to provide us with the initial batches that we need. We ordered 2 million from them last year, which were delivered. However, they notified us in November that they had an issue at their factory and would be unable to fulfill the orders that we had placed for another 2 million in the November month to carry us over December and January. That necessitated us having to look elsewhere in the world to bring in vaccines. And that process took some time because the vaccines had to be matched. The international vaccines had to be matched against the field strains that we have here. That process is now being completed, and as a result thereof, we've been able to this year import almost 3.5 million vaccines from Argentina and from Turkey, and that from next month, batches of 5 to 6 million from each of those suppliers will begin to roll into South Africa, and we look forward to that. I think that...
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Kobe, you've been allocated the third supplementary question.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Honourable Minister, due to your intransigent response to the foot and mouth disease outbreak, the SAAI, Sakaliga, Free State Agriculture have been compelled to take your department to court demanding private animal vaccination administration. Just to assist you along and ensure that you ultimately reach the 80% target that you promised to devastated farmers. In light of the court judgment that was handed to you by the Gauteng High Court yesterday, which proposes that the Minister finalize a comprehensive Section 10 scheme by the 28th of April 2026, Honourable Minister, will your department allow small farmers and emerging farmers who are already devastated by the outbreak to privately procure and administer the vaccination? Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you,
House Chair.
Honourable Minister.
I note that the Honourable Trollip, the usual questioner, is not here, but after his shellacking at the committee yesterday, I'm not surprised he doesn't want to show his face again in the House, because it's exactly that type of question. It's exactly that type of question that shows up the ignorance of the Honourable Trollip's party.
Honourable Minister, just hold on for a moment. I'll recognize one member.
Thank you very much,
why do
House
you want to be
Chair.
recognized?
House Chair, can you please protect us from this House degenerating? Can the Minister answer the substance of the question and leave the personality politics aside? Thank you very much, House Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Kobe. Honourable Minister, to the substance.
Lots of substance before the Madlanga Commission about their party this last week, I must say. They went to court yesterday, and let me tell you, the Honourable Trollip was singing their praises in the committee yesterday. And what did they get? They didn't get a single one of the prayers that they asked for in court yesterday.
Honourable Minister, just hold on. Honourable Kobe.
Thank you. Honourable Chair, I'm going to ask you once again to protect this House from a Minister who does not seem to understand the gravity of the foot and mouth disease to emerging and small
thank
farmers.
you. I have.
Can he answer the substance
Thank you. I have
of the
your
question?
point of order. Honourable members, Honourable Kobe, it is within the rights of the Minister to reference what has been said in the Portfolio Committee by other members in his answer. Let's allow him. Honourable Minister.
I don't think they should be talking about foot and mouth. I think they should be talking about foot in mouth. Let me just say this, that Sai and Sakaliga went to the court with a whole lot of prayers to yesterday try and get an urgent interdict by the court.
Honourable Minister, just hold on. Honourable Beasley, why do you want to be recognized?
Go, John Boy. Chair, I appreciate he comes from your same political party, but he's out of order here. He's personalising an issue and he's not asking the question. Foot and mouth is a serious factor, and he's not answering the substance of the question.
Thank you, Honourable Beasley. Honourable members, order. Honourable members, whilst we can disagree with the jab, well, in the context of vaccinations, I don't want to sound clever, but the jab the Minister is getting in, that doesn't mean that he's personalizing in his answer. Let's allow the Minister, and if at the end of his response you are still aggrieved, you're well within your rights to feel so. Honourable Minister.
So these organizations ran to court yesterday, and what did they pray? What was their prayers? Their prayers were for an urgent interdict to stop the state from interfering in this, that, the next thing, to allow mass private vaccinations, to allow a vaccine free-for-all. What did they leave the court with?
Honourable House Chair.
Honourable Reddy, why do you want to be recognized? And let me ask you not to unmute before you are recognized. I'll allow you this time, but please don't do that.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The problem is that
your table staff cannot see me seated here, but the rules say that when there's a breach of the rules, the order must be stated at that point, not after the debate or after the minister makes all his statements. And while I'm on the podium, we want to wish the minister a happy birthday. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Honourable Reddy. I'm sure that sort of will help diffuse the situation, although it is yet another interruption. Honourable Minister, happy birthday and please continue.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank my right honourable friend for the birthday wishes. We go back a long way to the Durban City Council, and I appreciate that. So what did SAI go to court with? They went with all these prayers. What did they leave with? They left with an agreement that I would release a Section 10 that we've already been working on, that has already been before the ministerial task team for the last 3 weeks, that's already been to the ICC for the last 3 weeks. If you're taking foot and mouth disease so seriously, can you please come with serious questions?
The minister did not answer.
No, Honourable Kobe, don't do that. Why do you want to be recognized, Honourable Kobe?
Thank you very much, House Chair. I'm aggrieved because the minister did not answer our question. He went on about the court judgment that we are speaking about. He did not answer my question. My simple question was, will he allow small and emerging farmers to privately vaccinate their herds? He still didn't answer, and the DA will pay dearly for it.
House Chair, it's not a serious question.
No. Honourable Minister, please don't do that. I've not recognized you. No, Honourable Lonzi, I'm first dealing with this point of order. Honourable Kobe, I've taken note of your grievance. However, let me just say from the chair's side, you did also, at the first part of your question, reference this court case. So I don't think it is fair to say that the minister didn't respond to your question. He may not have been able to get to the second part, and maybe in a next follow-up he can go there. But I don't think in the circumstances it's fair to say that he didn't deal with your question. Thank you. Honourable Lonze, why did you want to be recognized?
Chair, I want to call an order on the minister. He has not waited for you to rule on the point of order which was raised. He immediately opens his mics and he starts speaking. That's something that you've cautioned other members.
Thank you.
So please tell him that he's not leading you here in this parliament. You are the one who's presiding over
Thank
this
you,
parliament.
Honourable Lonzi. I did, if you paid attention, I did say to the minister, no, Honourable Minister, don't do that. Honourable members, the fourth supplementary question has been allocated to the Honourable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair and Honourable Minister. According to several veterinarians and experts on the disease, two conditions have to be met. The one is that the whole national herd has to be vaccinated in, say, 2 months, maybe a week or two above that, but in that kind of time frame to really reach herd immunity. And the other is, of course, that while there has to be repeated inoculations, that animals have to be marked adequately, those who have been vaccinated. I just want to know if we are on track for that. Are we going to be done after 2 months since the beginning of this whole campaign, or how would the Minister comment on those two conditions? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, and thanks to the honourable member for the question. I'm unsure where that veterinary information has come from. The ministerial task team has been very clear, as well as the vaccine manufacturers, that as long as you do the booster shot within 4 to 6 months, that it will suffice. Obviously, the introduction of the new strong vaccines, the Biogenesis Bago and the Dolvet vaccine, has led to far greater areas of immunity and disease resistance. And the goal is to have done 80% of the national herd by December and to have done them twice. That would have meant that we can reach herd immunity. As it relates to marking of animals, I'm sure the honourable member is aware, because we've changed the policy and that we're going to vaccinate the national herd, it means that we've done away with things like the F brand that have been particularly stigmatizing for small-scale and more rural farmers. We're using RFID ear tags and other types of identification that are on the ear to mark those animals that have been vaccinated. Where we've had shortages of ear tags in the provinces, we've had assistance from the RMIS and industry bodies who serve on the ministerial ICC, who have been able to assist us. And I think it's been very good to see the partnership between the private and the public sector in this fight against foot and mouth disease. The Milk Producers Organization have provided vehicles to help move vaccines to maintain cold chain around a variety of the provinces. They're assisting with veterinarians and vaccinators. The Stud Breeders Association, the Red Meat Producers Organization, and of course our agriculture unions have been able to help cascade the information down. I'm confident that this plan will lead South Africa
Thank you, Honourable
out
Minister.
of the path of being non-FMD, of having FMD to
Thank
being
you. Your
FMD
time is
free
now
with
expired.
vaccination.
Honourable Davids, we return to you for the last supplementary question.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, given that only 1 million vaccine doses has been distributed so far on a risk-prioritized basis, how will the department secure and distribute the additional millions of doses that will come to immunize the bulk of national cattle herd? Furthermore, does the department have sufficient veterinary personnel and cold chain logistics in place to ensure such a massive vaccinating program? If vaccinated shortages are logistical bottlenecks threaten the FMD contained effort, what plans have the department in place? Will the minister facilitate emerging impact on extra vaccines? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you to the Honourable Davids for the question. We haven't set out 1 million vaccines. The vaccination program commenced last year with 2 million vaccines that were procured by the state and the private sector that were administered last year. To date, we have distributed 2.5 million vaccines, 1.5 million from Biogenesis Bago, 1 million from JuneVax, and of course the 12,900 that were produced by the ARC. And as of the end of this month, the ARC will be able to provide us with 20,000 doses per week, which we'll be using for the rollout. That done in conjunction with the large batches that we're now able to import. For instance, in the last 48 hours, Dolvet received the license from SAPRA to import 6 million vaccines into the country, and Biogenesis Bago is awaiting a Pirbright result, but would be able to then see us import 5 million of that. They're able to provide those amounts on a monthly basis, so I'm very confident we will have enough vaccines to be able to be rolled out, and these vaccines are being rolled out on a priority basis in terms of starting first with those areas where the outbreaks are at their worst, the epicenters, and then moving outwards from there. And that is why there has been a bias towards KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, and the Northwest Province in terms of the allocation of those. No, the department doesn't have enough capacity, and that's precisely why we've pulled in the private sector to assist with both storage and distribution of those vaccines, and we're very grateful for that partnership that has been shown. It's very important to understand that the state will not be able to do this alone, and that's precisely right from the very first imbizo that we had on foot and mouth disease. There's been a very determined effort to bring the private sector along with us. That's why the private sector sits on the NTT and the ICC. Thank you.
Honourable members, question number 302 has been asked by the Honourable Bateman to the Minister of Finance. The question is, considering that the Republic's tax rates are amongst the highest amongst developing nations and are even higher when compared to the developed world, whether he has a medium-term strategy to make the Republic's tax rates competitive in order to attract investment economic growth and the creation of new jobs? If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the full details of this strategy? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. South Africa's direct tax burden on individuals and business is relatively high when compared internationally. This is evident in this personal income tax and corporate income tax to GDP ratios, as well as in the corporate tax rate and top tax rate applied to individuals. Personal income tax has a narrow base, 650,000 taxpayers, about 1% of the population, contribute half of the personal income tax revenue. In 2026 budget, I stated that raising taxes would be a last resort. If all goes well and in line with projections on economic growth and spending, it will not be necessary to increase taxes over the medium term, unless there are significant negative shocks, in terms of which we are monitoring the situation in the Middle East closely. We are keenly aware that raising taxes can hurt economic growth. The best way to raise revenue is to fund public goods and services is through economic growth. Previous periods of higher economic growth, for example, in the 2000s until the global financial crisis, have shown how tax revenue can grow even while tax relief is provided. This is why there is an emphasis on growth supporting structural reforms to ensure that, for example, there's a stable supply of electricity and water, that business can get output to the ports efficiently, and that local municipalities are better equipped to deliver on their service delivery mandates. These structural reforms are intended to make South Africa more attractive and competitive for investment, which should lead to job creation and economic growth, and ultimately increase the main tax bases, profits, employment, income, and consumption. In the 2026 budget has shown that if the economy does well, tax revenue increases, and there are opportunities to provide inflationary relief and encourage small businesses and savings. Any consideration for tax relief over the medium term will depend on tax bases growing structural because the economy is growing, and the tax base being broad and well protected. Decision in this regard will also consider the overall fiscal position, spending needs, and the debt to GDP ratio. Improving administrative efficiencies at SARS is also key to boosting revenue, to reduce the tax gap and improve fairness by ensuring that individuals and businesses are registered and declare and pay whatever they are meant to. Thank you. Lenagi question, Bukale buying any tax question I can take.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Bateman, a tax question.
Thanks very much, Honourable Minister, for your reply, which I largely agree with, although I would like to see more detail in terms of the strategy for making our taxes competitive. We all agree, Honourable Minister, that our top priority is economic growth and creating jobs. But currently our business taxes, including the dividend tax, are higher than many similar countries, which makes it harder to attract investment, and it reduces the profits available for reinvestment and for growth. Does the Minister accept that this creates a contradiction? We want growth and jobs, that's our primary goal, but at the same time, our tax rates are discouraging the investment that is needed to unlock the very growth and those very jobs that we need.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
growth is a function of a number of variables. Tax rates alone are not a determinant of investment. Investment depends on a number of things. In other words, whether the environment as a whole is conducive to investment, whether we've a proper logistic framework, we've got enough energy, whether we've got less crime, all of those things contribute to a conducive environment for growth, except that taxes are, but not on their own. In that sense, at the moment, that's why we're saying, if you look at the period between 2000, when we had sufficient growth, we could easily also reduce taxes, but at the same time, without undermining the fiscal position. At the moment, any substantive changes on some of these taxes can undermine the fiscal position. Thank you.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Makubela.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, given that strengthening revenue collection is critical to sustaining our fiscal framework and reducing the pressure on tax increases for ordinary South Africans, what are the measures or measurable impacts that the additional 3 billion allocation to SARS has or had on improving revenue collection, particularly in addressing illicit trade, the base erosion, and the high levels of outstanding debt collection? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Let me appeal to the honourable member. The illicit trade is a question that's following. And I'm going to respond to her as I respond to that question. But for now, let me respond to the fundamental question, substantive question she's raising. Has the increase in allocation to SARS had a positive impact on the revenue? The answer is yes, to a limited extent. And the failure as a result that to start that implementation, SARS has got to draw on new resources, new people, and training them. To actually realize the effects, it takes time because of that program of implementation. And I think we are likely to see positive impact of that revenue collection moving forward. But as for illicit trade, I'm dealing with that question in my last question. That question is raised by Honorable Bailey, and I'm going to come back to the question asked by the Honorable Member. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Van Rooyen.
Minister, you have always found it very easy to increase the regressive fuel levy, impacting negatively on most of poor households. Why is it so difficult for you, as a former trade unionist, a COSATU trade unionist for that matter, and the ANC, the former liberation movement, to introduce apartheid wealth tax to enhance tax to GDP ratio and deal with the issue of wealth redistribution? MK Party is asking this because of wrong policy choices. Our economy is not growing but stagnant, with high unemployment, extreme poverty, and appalling inequalities being the order of the day. In fact, the only real beneficiaries of the post-1994 economy are apartheid beneficiaries, who on the basis of apartheid acquired wealth supported by wrong economic policies, continue to suffer. Majority of our people continue to suffer because of wrong economic policies.
Honorable Van Rooyen.
Why are you
Your
not
time has
introducing
now
your wealth
expired.
tax?
There's no question.
Honorable Minister.
In responding to my predecessor, the former Minister of Finance,
For 2 days.
let me make the following. Let me make the following. I would appreciate people making concrete proposals on we've been discussing this wealth tax. Let me just give you a variety of taxes which were taxing the rich. The rich were taxing them on capital gains, were taxing them on profit, were taxing them on inheritance, were taxing them on a number of transfers, were taxing the rich. Maybe the proposal, Honorable Van Rooyen, must be to say, these are the other areas that have not been touched. These are the other areas which have not been touched. Or alternatively, on these areas, the tax to the rich is small. Let's have that discussion. I'm not at the moment saying that we are refusing to tax the rich, but we think we are. If that is insufficient, we'd like to see some proposals. Thank you.
Honourable Beasley.
Greetings, Minister. To ensure no tax increases and to possibly reduce taxes and to meet tax forecasts, it is critical that SARS continues to be seen as an efficient, effective and fair organisation. In this regard, when can we expect an announcement on the news commissioner, and can you confirm there will be no shocks? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
The announcement of the SARS commissioner is a prerogative of the head of state, the president. Now, I can't confirm that there can be no shocks. Mind you, the president is at liberty.
To you for the last follow-up question.
Honourable Minister, thank you again for your response and mentioning that there are many factors that investors look at, which obviously is true, but tax rates are one of the factors that they look at and are significant because they have a very direct effect on the after-tax returns that they generate. And on that measure, South Africa remains uncompetitive for investment. And so I would have thought that as part of looking at the factors that should clear the way with Operation Vulindlela, one of the reforms that should be looked at is in the area of the tax rates. I'd like to ask if the Minister can name a single country that's achieved strong, sustained investment and growth while imposing the same levels of tax on distributed profits that South Africa does.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
There's an obvious answer to the question. There's no country with sustained growth levels with high tax levels. That I accept. But countries have different developmental challenges. It is important to note how South Africa's developmental challenges look like. We are a society that is cast in a racial mode, and the scars of that racialism still manifest themselves, both in the poverty rates and income levels. And that means that to simply reduce tax levels in South Africa without taking those demographic challenges into account can perpetuate inequalities and poverty. That is the challenge South Africa faces. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, question number 263 has been asked by the Honourable Sangoni to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The question is, given that over-the-top platforms and online services operating in the Republic remain largely unregulated, what policy position has his department developed on over-the-top service taxation and local content obligations? And at what stage is the engagement with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa and the Film and Publications Board on implementing the specified obligations? The Honourable Minister.
Thanks very much, House Chair. In response to that, we are in the process of finalizing revisions to the policy framework for the audio and audio services media environment, which includes both traditional broadcasting and also this topic of the over-the-top platforms. Our aim is ultimately to ensure that there's fair, consistent, and technology-neutral framework that balances the public interest, that can ensure regulatory certainty, and most importantly, look at maintaining an investment environment that promotes support for local productions and supporting innovation. And as part of this review or refining of the audio and audiovisual media services online safety white paper, we are looking at several things, including international benchmarking. We have obviously observed that in some international dispensations, including France, which requires that streaming platforms invest a portion of their revenues into domestic content, and in other dispensations such as Canada, which through its online streaming act requires contributions to local productions, that we strike the right balance in between ensuring that these over-the-top platforms make a contribution to the local economy, while at the same time, because there is a massive contest for where productions happen, that our own dispensation does not become a disincentive for that. And with regards to the discussions about the role of ICASA and also the Films and Publications Board, the focus is to make sure that ICASA continues its role as the sector regulator, and while the Films and Publication Board most importantly focuses on content classification to minimize the risk of harmful content, and also making sure that we protect children and particularly vulnerable users with limited digital skills from any form of nefarious abuse based on online activity, including that which may happen on these over-the-top platforms. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Sangwani.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I don't think the Minister responded to my question about local content obligations, but nonetheless, let me ask my question. Minister, yesterday this Parliament hosted a roundtable of digital content creators, podcasters, and the over-the-top platforms like TikTok, Google, and Meta. In that engagement, these content creators highlighted to us that the sector is a rapidly growing one, already creating jobs for thousands of young people and giving voice to the voiceless. Now, my question is, does your government have a coherent strategy for the digital creator economy? Specifically, what concrete policy and funding interventions do you have to empower and scale young people in this segment of the digital economy? Have you engaged with the over-the-top services on exploitative monetization? And have you engaged the Minister of Finance on the proposed taxation of influencers and the impact of this on this emerging sector?
Honorable Minister.
Thanks very much for that follow-up. And first of all, just to begin the response with acknowledging and congratulating the committee for steering that debate and conversations with the podcasters and the digital creators. From our side, our approach from a policy perspective
Honorable Minister, may I ask you to just come a bit closer to the mic, please?
Sorry, I'll just hold it up. From our side, our point of departure is we have to maximize the prospects of this growing sector to succeed. And that means that we look at different things that affect us as the department as a start, which looks at, one, the policy support for the industry to grow relies on us removing those bottlenecks and regulatory interventions that impact, access to funding, for instance. And secondly, with regards to regulation of harmful content, which is a thing that a lot of South Africans are affected about. And our proposal, which is set out in the audio and audiovisual services online safety framework, is that there needs to be a self-mechanism that provides a channel for digital content users to be able to process, any grievances that they may have with the type of content that is being set up in here. I think it is important to recognize that given where the direction of the digital economy is growing, this industry represents millions and potential millions of sustainable livelihoods that we need to support. So we haven't gotten into a conversation as yet with the Minister of Finance about a taxing dispensation, but we have heard the cries from the content creators about first, the level of awareness that needs to happen in order to empower them to comply with the taxation laws of this country so that they are not founding at that element. And based on the discussions that we've also had, we have advanced talks. In fact, we have written twice and engaged with, instance, TikTok about expanding and opening up the Creators Fund for local
Honourable
content
Minister.
creators in this regard.
Honourable Botlani.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, what do you plan on taking in addressing these inhibitors? Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Look, I think before we even talk about the inhibitors, it's important to look at the totality of the pictures. The platforms will always advocate for the approach that says we are already doing enough in terms of our contributions to the local economy, their support for local productions, the number of jobs in which they create. But from the state, I think what is always important is to maximize the potential of these industries and attracting them to invest here in South Africa. So the queries which have been raised with us have been around, the compliances that are required in terms of doing business here in South Africa. From the creative industry, for instance, a lot of the queries that they have expressed in discussions that we have had is also around setting up and providing support for local productions that take place here. And that is why some of the interventions that are happening around the government ecosystem, including, the screen visas that my colleague, Honorable Leon Schreiber, introduced, which fast-track the process of visa applications for international crews that wants to be doing film productions here, is one of the proactive steps that helps in attracting these investments in here. The reality is that we are in competition with the rest of the world. Other dispensations are offering incentives in order to attract the business that these OTTs do in their respective dispensation. So yes, there is validity to the argument that we need to make sure that there is direct contributions to the economy, either through some form of taxation. At the very same time, we need to be cognizant that in other dispensations, we have observed that incremental taxing, for instance, has trickled to the consumer in the form of increase in subscriber fees and subscriber amounts. So we need to be striking that balance so that we don't have the unintended consequence of driving up prices that will end up excluding.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Hassan, why do you want to be recognised?
Thank you very much, House Chair. I wanted to call an order in terms of Rule 92 on Minister Malatsi, particularly for misleading the House. It was Minister Motsoaledi, when he was the Minister of Home Affairs in the previous administration, who actually introduced the fast tracking of visa processes.
Thank you, Honourable Hassan. That's a point of debate, I think, and not a point of order. Honourable Ntshabeleng.
Thank you so much, Chair. Honorable Minister, as you can see, I'm in the front row. I'm being promoted now, so I'm moving up. Given the fact that over-the-top services generate significant revenues from the Republic of South Africa while contributing very little to the fiscus or the local creative industry, what quantifiable revenues has been forgone due to the absence of taxation framework? And will the Minister take personal responsibility for the failure to set a binding deadline for finalizing policy position within National Treasury, as well as to enforce local content contributors and licensing requirements for over-the-top services? What specific accountability measures will be applied to the senior officials or entities responsible for the repeated postponement of these obligations, Minister? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
First of all, congratulations for your promotion to the front desk. I hope it lasts as long as your term here. Just in terms of that, because there were three questions that have been set out in that follow-up. One is, it's important to be cognizant of the fact that, legislatively we are adapting to the growth of this industry, right? And even the conversation around taxation, ultimately, where taxation policy resides, and we are taking the appropriate conversation with National Treasury about how this should be properly done, and they will guide us in that respect. Secondly, I think we can often fall into this trap of a false dichotomy that seeks to paint the picture that not moving with the speed that is required currently about answering the question of taxation means that that is a disloyalty to to the success of local industries. You can achieve both at the same time, and that's what responsible policy making should be striving to. Our approach should be, we want all of these local productions to be supported so that there can be an increase in the number of these productions that are being consumed on different OTT platforms. And that's the approach that should be going. It's not an either-or matter. We can achieve both ends at the same time. Thank you.
Honorable Hendricks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Minister, can the Minister provide clarity on whether ICASA and the Film and Publication Board have been specifically instructed to consider the cultural and linguistic needs of marginalized communities when developing over-the-top content classification and local content framework? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
The simplest and shortest answer to that is that yes, it's part of particularly ICASA's mandate to ensure that in the diversification of local content that it is reflected in different languages, and there's parity of that. But it's also important to separate the two entities' mandate. The Films and Publications Board's mandate is around the classification of content and ensuring that harmful content is prohibited from being shared on online platforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sangoni. We return to you for a final follow-up.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, given that this regulatory framework to govern OTTs is long overdue, what is the department doing in the meantime to curb the surge in dangerous misinformation and disinformation from things like the so-called white genocide narrative to AI tools being used to violate women and children? And secondly, what enforcement mechanisms and compliance monitoring instruments will the department have on hand to ensure that the OTTs accurately declare South African-generated advertising and subscription upon which local content and taxation will be calculated? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. The first part of the question relates to the actions that the FPB institutes in terms of takedown notices for any misinformation and disinformation that flows on online platforms. And to be frank, in acknowledgement of the prevalence of the issue that we are dealing with, the FPB's interventions, in as much as they are impactful, they are coming short because the reality is that we are seeing an increase in the spread of misinformation and disinformation, and it requires strengthening the FPB's arm. And part of that includes, amongst other things, looking at increased budgetary allocations, particularly around its, content enforcement division. And given the budgetary constraints that we are having, our discussions with the FPB is about how to also embrace the use of technology in enhancing its prospects around that aspect. On the second part of the question, it's an ongoing discussion. I think at this stage, South Africa hasn't finalized the best approach to maximize the two things that are coming to the fore at all times, which is the best taxation dispensation that will enable more investments in the country, that will help uplift more local productions coming off the fore. And secondly, to ensure that we continue to remain the destination for these OTTs to expand their investment. As I said in response to Honorable Bodlani's question, I think our obsession is around trying to make sure that we have a very balanced approach, because the competition in this space means that we are competing against dispensations that are offering very seductive incentives for some of these.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you.
Honourable members, question number 248 has been asked by the Honourable Beasley to the Minister of Finance. The question is, in light of recent statements by the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, that the illicit economy has grown from approximately 5% of gross domestic product 2 decades ago to between 12 and 15% of gross domestic product today, whether he has found that the illicit economy has expanded significantly faster than most formal sectors of the South African economy over the past 2 decades. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the relevant details? What specific fiscal enforcement and/or institutional interventions have been implemented by the National Treasury in collaboration with SARS and law enforcement agencies to reverse the rapid growth of illicit economic activity that undermines compliant businesses and erodes the tax base? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Kubela's question will also, part of her question will be covered here broadly.
Thank you. The next supplementary has been allocated to the Honourable Mahotwe.
No, take it, Chair.
Honourable Lonzi, masquerading as the Honourable Mahotwe.
No, thank you, Chair. We want the Minister to answer this question that he has been running away from. Now, Minister, you will know that the outsourcing of core services in government does, in fact, in some instances, lead to irregular supply chain practices, illicit flows such as tender fraud, fronting, and even non-compliance with tax obligations. So there certainly is a link to the original question. Now, the question remains, now that the President of the Republic, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, has supported and endorsed the insourcing bill and program of the EFF, what concrete measures are you going to put in place to ensure the implementation of insourcing? Khawuphendula umbuzo, Minister. Uyeka inkani yexhego akho sebuhlanti apha.
Honourable Minister.
Mandihlise inkani. Mamela, I think part of the point of the problem is that legislative framework in this country is structured different. Assuming you were to have an insourcing, you will have to have an impact on the entire procurement system. You will have to have an impact on the Public Finance Management Act. Let me say how. The Public Finance Management Act on its own has vested powers on the accounting officer, who must make such decisions. Procurement, as you may see in the court case, by the way, the judge that punished me in February 2023 was Judge Madlanga, where he said in the Constitutional Court, procurement belongs purely to each organ of state. All that I'm required to do is to provide the legislative framework, which provides the guidelines. So the difficulties we're talking about are going to confront those legal and constitutional challenges. It can't be the responsibility of one individual, the Minister of Finance. And yes, I'm an
Thank you. Honourable Adebe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honourable Minister, what steps is the National Treasury taking to leverage data analytics, financial intelligence, and cross-border information sharing to proactively identify and disrupt illicit networks? And how will accountability be ensured where weaknesses within governmental systems enable illicit activities to persist? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
The whole purpose of what we're talking about is precisely to utilize state-of-the-art technology, because even these criminals are far ahead in terms of using technology. We ourselves have got to catch up and make sure that we can use state-of-the-art technology. For instance, our borders now, we're talking about smart borders in order to be able to deal with that question. So I agree with you. That's what we're dealing with at the moment, particularly on borders, dealing with smart borders.
Thank you. Honourable Beasley, you have the last opportunity.
And thank you. Minister, as you are aware, I have volunteered to serve on the President's National Illicit Economy Disruption Program. In the words and call of President Ramaphosa, Tuma Mina. In light of this, should I be expecting a call soon? Tuma Mina.
Honourable Minister, I don't know whether that was a question, but over to you.
As you are aware, the composition of that leader or the composition of that program is a president prerogative. The least I can do is to say, I'll communicate your wishes to the president. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, question number 264 has been asked by the Honourable Mofokeng to the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources. The question is, given the promulgation of the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Act, Act 23 of 2024, what local content obligations and management participation requirements have been embedded in the regulations under the specified act that go beyond the 10% baseline of the previous framework? What mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that black-owned and black women-owned upstream companies are able to meaningfully participate in licensing rounds rather than serving merely as passive equity partners to large international operators? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. Honourable House Chairperson and members. Local obligation regulation includes development of skills development plan and employment equity targets. Consistent with the Employment Equity Act, there is no local content obligation and management participation in the regulations that go beyond the 10% baseline of the previous framework. The licensing round, in terms of Section 32(7) of the Act, will be open to any person or any company that want to apply for petroleum right. In terms of Section 37(1)(5), when the minister considers application received on the same day, he or she will give preference to application from black players. So the emphasis that is made here is that we're talking about business interests. We're not talking about EPWP, where you allocate people. People, if they have resources, can participate in anything 100% if they want to, if they have got the resources.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mofokeng.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable Minister, given the local content obligations under the UPRDA regulations, what dedicated technical assistance and preferential access to seismic data mechanisms has the department established to support emerging black-owned upstream operators in preparing competitive applications for licensing rounds, and what enforcement mechanism exists within the UPRDA regulatory framework to distinguish between genuine operational participation by black women-owned entities and front companies designed to satisfy BBBE compliance metrics without substantive business involvement? Thank you, House Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
I think it is important for all of us to avoid this temptation of thinking that black business and black women are subjects of mercy and they participate in business activities. They must compete, get into that space and be assisted as participants, not have a special arrangement that just put them there. They must be assisted. First of all, they must express an interest. That's why Honorable Manye, you must appreciate that politics don't create entrepreneurs. You forget this. Entrepreneurs are inborn. They participate. Only then can they be assisted. But you don't go around looking for blacks and black women to assist them. No, you don't do that. Those who are interested, who are entrepreneurs at heart, you assist them and support them.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Lorimer. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If local products that are the subjects of the local content regulations were cheaper, they would be used. So it follows that local content is more expensive and its requirements will impose greater costs on the industry. What modelling or research has the department done to establish what those costs may be and how much of a disincentive will be posed by the regulations and the extra red tape involved in complying with them?
The Honourable Minister.
Honorable Lorima should be assisting us here. He participated in an era where South Africa was a pariah of the world. And things were done not because they were cheap, they were done because they were necessary. That principle has not changed. We must assist local business people to participate in the economic activity and facilitate and subsidize them if need be. But it cannot be only on the basis of the price that we support people. It should be on the basis of the need and necessity in society that we support people.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Manye.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, the draft regulations 2025-2026 add public participation and initiative for skills development and procurement, but zero binding percentages beyond the 10% equity. Now, Minister, name just one concrete measurable obligation in these regulations that force real local content and management participation beyond the old framework, or admit that this is just a recycled ANC window dressing while measures keep control. On the black women ownership, noting the provisions of Section 32 and Section 37, the truth though is that black entrepreneurs remain passive equity passengers, no dedicated funds, no technical support mandates, no operational control clauses, and no set-asides for black women-led groups. Where are the set-aside mechanisms, like 30% blocks reserved for black women consortia, to make them real operators in licensing rounds, not decorations?
Your time has expired. The Honourable Minister.
There's a difference between dealing with reality and playing to the gallery. It's not the same. When you play to the gallery, you will say what people want to hear. When you do that, we use a term in politics called is populism. It's not an ideology. Populism is not an ideology. Now listen, populism is not an ideology. It is an act of attracting attention. Now let me give you your answer. 10% that is allocated is in itself quite substantial. 10%, no, I can see you're all having your mouth hanging. I can tell you, Manye, I'm in mining. No, I am in mining. In that mining, with those provisions that are limited.
Honourable Minister, will you just take your seat, please? Why do you want to be recognized, Honourable Member? Yes, let's refer to each other in respectful terms. Honourable Manye.
Honourable Manye. Honourable Manye. You see, when you have 10% and another one has 10% and they pull them together, they form a seriti that become a monopoly coal producing company because people put together what they have, small as it looks, but you merge it. What you should educate our black brothers and sisters is to appreciate the importance of joining forces with whatever you have, because the small and small result in big. But this thing of wanting to do it alone is actually a shortcoming. That's why we have an Exaro today. That's why we have a Sereti. I can talk of coal mining. I can't talk of any other sector. That's why we have a Tungela. It's because we encourage people to pull resources together and make something big. So,
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
okay.
The fourth supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ngati.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, in light of concerns that local contest requirements are often undermined during implementation, what enforcement measures and penalties have the department introduced to ensure that international operators comply with management participation obligations, including decision-making, role for South African partners, rather than limiting them to minority or symbolic position? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Sometimes when we talk about local content and counterpose it to global players, local content applies to everybody, not international players. It applies to local players as well. If they take a big chunk and they must comply with local content, everybody must comply with local content. It's not a global issue, it's a local issue. But the most important thing is that when there is provision in the Act for local content, everybody is expected to comply with that requirement. It's not set aside for particular people. So local content is a necessity, is urgent, and it should be complied with as provided for in the Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mufokeng.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable Minister, given the Minister's response on local content and black economic participation under the UPRDA, what carried interest or state equity participation mechanisms has the department embedded in the UPRDA licensing framework to ensure the state, through the CEF or designated entity, retains a meaningful stake in blocks awarded to international operators? And has the department audited participation agreements concluded under MPRDA to determine whether black-owned and black women-owned entities previously holding nominal equity positions have been transitioned into substantive operational roles? Thank you, House Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
In the Act for Petroleum, state is entitled to a 20% free carry, the state. Then you can all participate in addition to that 20%. That's why we have made an offer of that 20% to be used to establish the Sovereign Wealth Fund. If you use that and the royalties, you can have very sound Sovereign Wealth Fund. That is an idea of us in the department. We're selling it to the state to buy. Because the Sovereign Wealth Fund is quite important for critical times like this one, when we are actually vulnerable because of the war. And we must be having some reserves that we've developed over a period of time. So the 20% free carry for the state is an appropriate tool for establishment of the sovereign wealth fund, including royalties in mining. If you pull them together, it will be quite a huge amount of sovereign wealth fund. But if my colleague here has not bought to the idea, I can shout and shout. I must persuade him every day until he agrees. When we are two, we can persuade two others, and we are four. It will work well.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Members, question number 306 has been asked by the Honourable Bapti to the Minister of Electricity and Energy. The question is, what progress has been made on the ring fencing of revenues in the electricity distribution business of municipalities that are not paying diligently for the electricity that is purchased from Eskom? The Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, House Chair, and thanks to Honourable Bapti for the pertinent question. Maybe just to make the point that the distribution side of the electricity value chain has become a major albatross to our efforts to transform the sector. If you like, it's a consequential part of the value chain, and it can undermine the prospects of the transformation of the sector. Just in numbers, municipalities collectively owe Eskom upwards of 102 billion rands, and municipalities in return are owed by individual customers upwards of 440 billion rands. So clearly this is a consequential intervention. And as a result of this under-collection of revenue and the failure to direct this revenue towards the refurbishment of the assets, the maintenance of the infrastructure and its upkeep and modernization, we are seeing increasingly the disruption of distribution and reticulation to customers on occasions of inclement weather, as we have seen in other parts of the country most recently. So what are the interventions we are making, Honourable Bapti? 3 interventions. The first one is that there has to be an enforcement of the licensing requirements. So any reticulator, so it can be a municipality or Eskom, is required to ensure that they ring fence both the revenues and expenditure of what is earned from the sale of electricity in their respective jurisdictions, and the expectation is that there has to be reinvestment back into the assets. And what we are seeing in municipalities, largely including Eskom, is that there has not been any significant refurbishment program post-1994, and that's why you are seeing that this aging infrastructure is unable to keep up with the demand, the pressure, and also the inclement weather. So we are insisting that as part of the 3-tier intervention, there has to be a strict enforcement by NERSA on the licensing requirements. The second one is we have concluded a discussion at cabinet level. We are introducing what we call the distribution agency agreement that is championed by Eskom. And in that, what we are attempting to do, Honourable Bapti, through you, Chair, is to ensure that we are able to capacitate municipalities to discharge their responsibilities. So we know that there's been over time a significant hemorrhaging of the technical expertise at local municipalities, and that has hampered or undermined the ability to do scenario planning, do projections on utilization and demand, and therefore make the necessary capital allocation for the refurbishment. So we'll support them with that, and also downstream interventions, ensure that the collection rates goes up, installation of prepaid meters, making sure that there's credit control in place. And then the last pillar of this intervention is to make sure that we accelerate the reform agenda so that the municipalities are better regional powers. So we are not about to take away the right of municipalities to reticulate, but as part of this reform agenda, we must be able to empower them so that they can competently discharge their responsibilities. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Bapti.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Minister, this dysfunction in the municipalities is having a profound influence on the daily lives of the majority of South African citizens and businesses. And the reform initiatives you speak of in the electricity sector have been initiated partly to improve security, quality of supply, etc., but very importantly, the price of electricity, to restrain the rampant growth that we've experienced in electricity prices over the past decade. What then is the impact of the growing municipal debt to Eskom on the unbundling process and on the liberalisation of the electricity market?
Honourable Minister.
Well, we are continuing apace with the transformation of the sector. And our view is that we must not view the various components of the value chain independently. What do I mean? Don't look at generation alone, don't look at transmission alone and distribution alone. When you think of the transformation of the sector, you must have an appreciation of the net impact of one decision over the other. When you tamper with the distribution side, what does it do to transmitting and in return to generation? So we have to have if you like, a holistic approach when we do this, the transformation of the sector. Of course, it will be sequenced, it will be orchestrated and managed, but I think it's important that we have a whole view. We know, as I speak to you now, that the most profitable part of the business now is the transmission side. I've listed the challenges on the distribution side. Of course, generation is under significant strain as a result of the obligations with regards to the environment, whether you can continue to generate using this abundance of resource called coal. We have taken a decision, we'll do that. We'll employ clean coal technologies because it's our endowment. We are not about to relinquish that strategic advantage. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that this does not undermine our quest to ensure that there's a qualitative transformation of the sector that ultimately benefits national interest. So in all the totality of all of these things, that transformation must enhance national interest. National interest is an overriding consideration. Everything must subordinate to the national interest. And to the extent that it erodes our ambitions, national interest, sovereign interest, whichever way you choose to call it, we will not pursue that. But what we know is that looking at other jurisdictions in the world, when you transform the sector, you introduce competition, there's greater efficiency, and in theory, as the classics will say, it has to have some positive impact on the price of electricity, affordability, and modernization. So that's the route we're pursuing, Honorable Bapti.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Nkosi.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. Honourable Minister, how will the success from the municipalities be repeated in other municipalities nationwide? I mean, how do you plan to roll out the successful ring fencing models or interventions to other struggling municipalities? And what impact will this program have in reducing municipal debt to Eskom and ensuring affordable electricity tariffs to consumers? I thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Nkosi, for that question. So we apply what in science or engineering we call the Pareto principle. So 20% effort, 80% return. So what do I mean by that? Its manifestation in the space is that if you come to look at the totality of municipalities that make up the debt, the 102 billion plus, it is really about 20 municipalities that account for about 70% of that debt. So it's that debt. So what that tells us is that the concentration must be on these municipalities that account for 70% of the debt. And that's why we have started in the rollout of the distribution agency agreement. I must say that we are finding traction. In these municipalities, there's a reception by the political leadership there. And I guess that they don't have any other option but to cooperate. But I must say that we are not using coercion for them to participate. It's voluntary. And we also introduce incentives for them to participate. And we're beginning to see this product. I mean, Enfuleni is a classic example. Malutia Pufong, another example of what has happened. So essentially, we've got a template that works. So what we are going to do is to export that template into other municipalities. Of course, we'll take account of the particular nuances or peculiarities that are present in one municipality versus the other. So it's a dynamic, if you like, intervention. But the parameters of the intervention are fixed. They are immovable. So what we do is the degree of maneuverability within those parameters. I'm confident that we have the template. It's going to take a lot of time. It requires patience. That's the nature of this institutional intervention. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be exceptionally testing, but we are confident of our abilities to resolve this problem. Thanks, Chair.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mbata.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Minister, I just want to give you an updated version of what is owed to Eskom by the municipalities. It is 110 billion rands, not 102. This is effectively from the 18th of March. The third report will tell you. Lastly, which one are these, or where, or who are these municipalities? Because we keep hearing it's 30%. Firstly, the bill doesn't get decreased. The bill is increasing. Lastly, what measures are you going to implement to fast track the repayments by these municipalities? Because this affects the availability of electricity to citizens. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Mbata, for that great question, my friend. I got confused for a moment. You are wearing blue there. And now I have to reorientate my answer. So first is I spoke of municipalities collectively owing Eskom upwards of 102 billion. So 110 billion is upwards of 102 billion. So I'm happy that we are together there. And then to make the point, the distribution agency agreement, you're absolutely right. It's meant to stem the exponential increase in the debt level. For as long as we are unable to get people into our corner signing up to the DAA, we've been able to see, evidence is there, and as you know, with the accounts that we give to the portfolio committee, that this number keeps on increasing. And we are saying that the best way of stemming that is to ensure that they sign up to the DAA. The last thing you want to do is to declare an intergovernmental conflict, because the easiest way out of this is for Eskom to implement credit control, deny Tshwane, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni. Those are major metros, access to electricity on the account that they are owing us. We don't think that's a convenient way of resolving the problem, because we are accentuating the crisis that is confronting us. So we're pursuing intergovernmental relations, and I have no doubt that these municipalities are committed to this program. And that's why I made the point earlier on that they, on their own account, they are coming on board. We have prioritized the top the municipalities that account for 70% of the total debt on account of that Pareto principle I referred to. We'll get it right. We'll come much later to the smaller municipalities. Of course, from their share of revenue collected, they are owed a lot, but as part of the total share of what is owed to Eskom, it's not as significant. And I'm not saying it's not meaningful. It's not as significant, so we're prioritizing the top ones, and gradually we'll come to the rest of municipalities. But we are together. We really want to help municipalities to prosecute their functions, keep to their licensing requirements, conditions, and I'm confident that we'll get it right, Honourable Mbata. Thanks, Chair.
The fourth supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Paulson.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the question. Municipalities relying on revenue from the sales of electricity and water to fund basic infrastructure are bankrupt, cruel, and punishing to the poor. Minister, would you consider the EFF's proposal to rather authorize Eskom to take over the distribution of electricity from municipalities that are unable to manage their financial obligations and consistently fail to pay for the bulk electricity they purchase from their utility?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, the throne of Honourable Paulsen. Honourable, thanks for that question. I had made an admission earlier on that on this question I might not be objective. Because if you come to think of it, what is the primary source of municipalities? It is the surcharge they are placing on electricity, the surcharge they are placing on water, and rates and taxes. That's a primary means of revenue. And municipalities have got an obligation to ensure that they are able to invest that capital, reallocate it into their municipal spaces to build social infrastructure. So if ESCOM were to take that function, you're denying their municipality the ability to discharge their responsibility. And municipalities, as conceptualized in the Constitution, will not be able to fulfill their mandate. The answer is not there. The answer is not where this responsibility lies. The answer is in the capacity of municipalities to collect. So what the DAA does is not punitive. We're saying that we are going to affirm your right to collect. We are going to support you with the technical capacity. We are going to incubate you for the next 3 years. By the time we leave the municipality, you have the technical capability, you have refurbished your infrastructure, you are able to protect your revenue streams, you are able to enforce credit control. Municipalities will exist as a third sphere of government. So it mustn't exist at the mercy of national government. Otherwise, you are eroding what essentially is the essence of municipalities. If you were to ask me, we have not had a conversation in cabinet, I will not support an idea where we weaken municipalities. If anything, we must strengthen them. And we know where the challenges are. Let's support them and not undermine what the constitutional injunction is. Municipalities have regional powers, they have a right to exist, and no one in this house has a right to remove it from them unless there's a constitutional change. And of course, we can have a conversation about that. But the municipality is the closest sphere of government. Allow them to discharge that responsibility. So that's my short answer to you.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Bapti.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honourable Minister. I'm going to come back to that last point you made and refer to the President's State of the Nation address that we heard earlier this year. And what he said is that there will be managed utilities to undertake the distribution of electricity in municipalities that don't have the capacity to manage the service. And so my question may conflict with what you've said, but I'm going to ask it is, what practical models, if any, are being considered to achieve what the President has said to us?
The Honourable Minister.
No, thanks, Honourable Bapti. There is no tension in the statement that the utilities will be formed to help municipalities or to discharge that function at the level of municipalities. It does not talk to the ownership of those utilities. The argument I'm making can be reconciled with that statement. Create these utilities. In our own conceptualization, the DAA is a forerunner to those utilities. But municipalities will have ownership of those utilities. And therefore, municipalities should have the right, once these monies are collected, reinvestment back into these assets that they, if you like, our cash cows, and then they can reallocate the surplus into their own jurisdiction. Otherwise, municipalities will not have the capacity to roll out social infrastructure. Someone must build a clinic. Someone must build a rural road. Someone must ensure that there's reticulation of water into individual households. That requires money. And I'm saying your biggest earner at the municipal level of any additional income outside the grant dispensation is water and electricity. And once you deny them that, municipalities will not be able to discharge their constitutional obligation as envisaged in the Constitution. Don't constrain them. You must enable them. So the idea of utilities and that at the municipal space does not necessarily erode the right of municipalities to be the owners or be invested in the ownership of those municipalities. Then you are resolving both. You are resolving the ability of municipality to reallocate that capital, but also making sure that they have sufficient technical capacity and know-how to collect, refurbish, improve, expand, and discharge their constitutional obligation. There is no tension there. So I was trying to reconcile the arguments. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Why do you want to be recognized, Honourable Member?
Honourable House Chair, the younger the Minister, the better the quality of answers to the questions.
No.
Just want to comment, Honourable Minister. But secondly,
No, Honourable Member.
Secondly, House Chair. Secondly, House Chair.
You're out of order.
secondly, House Chair.
You're out of order, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, the time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. I request members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and mace to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.